is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally, and what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, it's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail and some of us just abroad. You know, just two were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is, the people live in fear to identify themselves as protesters, to identify themselves as against Putin's regime, etc. That's why today there is no chance for opposition to rise inside Russia. But outside, of course, this war against Ukraine, that is the fundamental issue for all foreign leaders. And in fact, just support of Ukraine and not to let Putin to destroy Ukraine, to defeat Ukraine. That is an important issue because just Ukraine, that's not just in Ukraine, war in Ukraine. Ukraine just fighting for their territorial integrity, but fighting for the whole European countries because after Ukraine, other countries could appear, other subject of aggression could be, and Putin easily could try to test Article 5 of NATO Charter. It could be one of the small countries of Baltic states.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in an hour's time, trade unionist and political commentator Andy MacDonald, and also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. In a few moments' time, I'll be crossing line to Tel Aviv to speak to world-famous mystifier Uri Geller. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you very much. Good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It is just coming up to 1 minute past 3. We start with the news that's been leading throughout the course of today, that dozens of pro-Palestine marches are taking place across the UK this weekend after Rishi Sunak called on organisers not to let extremists hijack those protests. In his speech delivered from Downing Street last night, he called for the nation to unite and warned that Islamist extremists and far-right groups are spreading poison, he said, and trying to tear us apart. It followed George Galloway's controversial win in the Rochdale by-election earlier this week, which the Prime Minister described as beyond alarming.
The Rochdale by-election returned a candidate who dismisses the horror of what happened on October the 7th, who glorifies Hezbollah and is endorsed by Nick Griffin, the racist former leader of the BNP. I need to speak to you all this evening because this situation has gone on long enough and demands a response not just from government, but from all of us.
Organisers of those protests this weekend have now responded to the Prime Minister's pledge to back stronger police action, suggesting that he should expel some of his own MPs because of their divisive views. It's after Rishi Sunak, in his statement last night, pledged to support the robust policing of demonstrations, particularly pro-Palestinian marches. The Metropolitan Police have in the past said that showing support for a terror group is a criminal offence, and they've added that the right to protest comes with the responsibility to act lawfully. Several local marches, as I said, are planned today and more tomorrow before another national demonstration in London coming up on the 9th of March. As we've heard today, that a manhunt is underway after 3 people were injured in a shooting in an area of the capital popular with bars and restaurants. The shots were fired by assailants on a moped as they were being pursued by police in Clapham in South London. That was at around 5 o'clock last night. 2 people, we understand, suffered shotgun pellet injuries as they were drinking at a nearby pub. A 3rd person was also injured by the moped itself, though police have said the injuries are not life-threatening. This afternoon, we learned that a cargo ship was abandoned in the Red Sea after a Houthi missile strike off the coast of Yemen, and that ship has now sunk. It comes as reports from the UK's maritime agency have also suggested that the militant group, who are backed by Iran, have attacked another vessel off the coast of Yemen. Meanwhile, the UK, the US and the EU all have military ships in the region patrolling and protecting commercial vessels that are passing through that important shipping route. Now, a fashion show hosted by Victoria Beckham at Paris Fashion Week has been disrupted by an animal rights group, PETA. Activists were seen taking to the stage. If you're watching on television, you can see the scenes here from that fashion show yesterday, where the protester took to the stage, walking the runway alongside the models, holding signs that said "Viva Vegan Leather." The group explained that while Ms Beckham's fashion brand has stopped using real fur and exotic skins, they claim it still uses leather, which is obtained via methods it says are cruel. The group has also targeted brands including Burberry and Fendi. The show did, though, continue after that protest. And staying with fashion, the icon Iris Apfel has died today at her home in Florida at the age of 102. She was known, of course, for her distinctive glasses and fun, no-nonsense approach to fashion. And she founded the luxury company Old World Weavers with her husband in 1950. She then went on to have a long and successful career in fashion. Then, at the age of 97, she signed a major modelling contract with a global agency just after a year of having a limited edition Barbie doll created in her image. 60-mile-per-hour limits are to be scrapped along some parts of the M1 and the M6 after a successful test of greener driving speeds. Drivers can now return to the national speed limit, 70 miles an hour, after some improvements were seen to air quality. Cars had been forced to slow down on the 2 motorways in the Midlands since 2021 in an effort to see if driving more slowly would reduce emissions. And finally, the best of Britain's music industry are gathering in London today for this year's Brit Awards, including none other than the Princess of Pop.
Everybody's doing a brand new dance now. Come on,
She needs no introduction. That's the superstar Kylie Minogue, who will be crowned this year's global icon. She'll be performing a medley of some of her greatest hits later tonight. And leading the main awards, however, is Ray, who's already broken 7 records with nominations across the musical remit. That's the most in a single year. She's up against some stiff competition, though, with Dua Lipa and Olivia Dean also up for key awards tonight. Those are the headlines. For more, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the code there on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
So it is fast approaching 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, performer and mystifier Uri Geller will be joining me live from Tel Aviv for the latest on the Israel-Hamas war. Stay tuned for Climate Control at 3:20. I'll be unpicking the debate around the climate and asking why so many Welsh farmers are protesting for plans to make them use their land for environmental initiatives. At 3:35, Dr. Pam Spur will be live to discuss a transgender cat killer who will have her crimes officially recorded as a woman, even though she's serving her sentence for murder in a male prison. And Howard Cox is my political spotlight this week as the Reform UK London mayoral candidate tells us about why he delivered a petition to freeze fuel duty to Downing Street. Now, that's coming up in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. Well, as pro-Palestinian marches are once again taking place across the country today, protesters are calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, they've been happening since the Israel-Hamas conflict which began in October last year. And now pro-Palestinian demonstrators are turning their attention to Barclays Bank. They're blockading and occupying branches of the bank in protest over its links to the Israel arms companies. So joining me now is our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, who was at one of these protests in Wolverhampton. Jack, talk to me about the protests, and out of interest, do they seem to have taken note of some of the things that Rishi Sunak said?
Well, certainly today, from what we saw at the protesting here outside this Barclays Bank, now, they're very peaceful. Certainly none of the chants that we've been hearing, of course, at some of the marches, chants like "From the River to the Sea." There was some music being played, pro-Palestine music, but certainly no chanting from any of the protesters here. They had their placards saying, of course, calling for a ceasefire, as well as, of course, waving those Palestinian flags, but there wasn't any of the chanting. Now, the reason that they are boycotting Barclays, and this is all coming from the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, today is one of their national days of action where they're calling on people at branches across the country to boycott Barclays. They say it's because the bank, from their own research, has £1 billion, they say, in shares and provides £3 billion in loans and underwriting to 9 companies, they say, whose weapons components and military technology, they say, are being used by Israel on their attacks in Gaza. So that's why they want people to boycott Barclays, with the idea being that, therefore, if people boycott Barclays and they take their business elsewhere, they won't be able to afford to loan those companies any money, of course. But what we've seen from the likes of Rishi Sunak, of course, on the steps of Downing Street, is that he is saying that there are forces here at home trying to tear us apart and wanting the police to properly police these kind of protests when we see things which are alarming and intimidatory, rather than just maybe mind the protesters. Certainly there was some involvement from the West Midlands Police here in Wolverhampton today when there was a passerby who was obviously growing in frustration at the repeated Palestinian protests in the likes of cities like this in Wolverhampton. He tried to confront the protesters 3 times, going up to them, shouting in their faces. There was a bit of back and forth, but the West Midlands Police did get involved and pull those 2 people apart and then sent him on his way. And finally, after the 3rd attempt, he did leave once and for all. So there was some confrontation, but certainly the police more keen and eager to get involved. But possibly that could just be just because of where we are today. It wasn't so much greater size in numbers, particularly. It was small numbers, so that's probably why the police were able to get involved more freely. When we have that first, again, since that point of Rishi Sunak's speeches on the steps of Downing Street on the 9th of March, that big, more national protest for Palestine, that's when we'll really see whether the words of the Prime Minister have been taken in by the likes of the Metropolitan Police down in London, and we'll see then how these protests are policed in the coming weeks.
Did you sense, though, that the police appear to have more confidence in their behaviour? Because a lot of the time when I've watched the police, they've looked somewhat timid when it comes to sort of speaking and approaching protesters.
It's certainly, well, when they kind of got knack of this starting to, I wouldn't say kick off, because there was no kind of physical involvement between the 2 parties, but when the shouting got a little bit louder, the police were straight over just to kind of come and try and pull these 2 people apart and just try and move this member of the public that was obviously not happy with these protests today, move them on. Certainly this morning, when we're here observing the protests at the start, there was quite a few members of the police before they realised that there wasn't really going to be too much of a crowd, and obviously they diverted resources. So certainly the police presence has been greater here today than maybe it has been previously. And yes, certainly I'd say, Nana, that my observation is that they were certainly quicker to get involved and not just stand around maybe watching, as some criticism has been of them before.
Listen, Jack, thank you very much. That's Jack Carson. He's our West Midlands reporter. He's there in Wolverhampton. Well, joining me now from Israel to discuss the conflict there is Mr. Uri Geller. Uri, thank you so much for joining me again. It's always a pleasure to see you. I wanted to ask you straight away, were Rishi Sunak's words welcome words from where you are in Israel?
Nana, please, allow me to divert your attention to something totally different. Look, okay. Nana, we usually talk about what's going on in Israel. But today, I want to ask, what's going on in Britain? What is happening to your country? So, last week, jihadists hijacked Big Ben. Then your MPs say they're getting death threats. And now, some Hamas fanboy called George Galloway has been elected. What is happening to British democracy? Nana, listen, will you allow me to deliver a personal message for George Galloway on your program? Please allow me. So listen, hey, George, now, I know you don't like Israelis and you boycott them as a matter of principle. Yes, you refuse to even meet them. You refuse to meet Israelis. But wait a minute, George. But look at this. Look at this, George. Remember, George, how you came running up to me. Yes, you came to me because I was famous. Suddenly, you didn't really care so much. You put your arm around me, look, and you knew I was Israeli, and you knew that I had served in the IDF. George Galloway hugged an Israeli. What a hypocrite!
Well, listen,
George,
Uri...
Wait, let me finish.
All right, you finish, and then I'll speak for George.
Yeah, George, listen, you are a walking pantomime, and I have a very special gift just for you. Here it is, a special Uri Geller.
Not that spoon. No, we can't see that. Honestly, Uri,
I have to.
This is... Apologies to George or anyone who was offended by that. George Galloway is not here to defend himself either, Uri. But yes, I was worried you put that spoon up there. But yeah, Uri, you cheeky man.
I mean, it's on my Cadillac. You know, I just took it off my Cadillac. No big deal. Come on, everybody does that. This BBC presenter did it too. So, but let's go over here. I'm going to take it back to the Cadillac. Don't worry.
Yes,
I'm not going to show it again.
Offended by that. If you look very closely, you'll see why I'm saying that. Anyway, sorry. Go on, Uri.
About Israel. Look, seriously, here in Israel, we got some terrible news last night. You know, as you know, Hamas has been holding dozens of Israeli hostages for 148 days. Well, now it says that 7 more have been killed. This is unbearable for Israel. We have got to get the remaining hostages out. And lastly, I'll say this. Hostage release talks are going nowhere because Hamas is making impossible demands. Do not forget that Hamas has caused this war. Israel wants to end the war, end the Palestinian suffering, and bring our hostages back. This is where we are.
Well, listen, Uri, thank you very much. Always good to talk to you. Take care of yourself. And a very interesting spoon. That's Uri Geller, mystified there, live in Tel Aviv. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. It's fast approaching 16 minutes after 3 o'clock. Coming up as a transgender killer crime is recorded as a woman. Is gender ideology getting out of hand? But next, it's time for Climate Control, where we unpick the debate around the climate. And the question is the Welsh Government deliberately setting out to punish its farmers? This is GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Nana Akua, weekends from 3 p.m.
So after his mad dash to see his father last week, Prince Harry predictably went on TV to talk about it. He gave his first interview to Good Morning America, whilst apparently being filmed by a crew that were doing a documentary on the Invictus Games. He didn't disclose his father's diagnosis, but frankly, even the fact that he was on TV talking about it was concerning. No wonder they're keeping him at arm's length. This is what he said.
How did you get the news that the King was ill?
I spoke to him.
And what did you do next?
I jumped on a plane and went to go and see him as soon as I could.
How was that visit for you emotionally?
Look, I love my family. The fact that I was able to get on a plane and go and see him and spend any time with him, I'm grateful for that.
An illness in the family can have a galvanizing or sort of reunifying effect for a family.
Absolutely.
Is that possible in this case?
Yeah, I'm sure. Throughout all these families, I see it on a day-to-day basis. The strength of the family unit coming together.
He also said that he loves his family, but then he said that he had his own family in America. So which family does he love? The late Queen's last few years of life were marred with accusations of racism, which Harry later backtracked on, claiming that they hadn't actually used the word, so inadvertently admitting to gaslighting us all. But the Sussex's stock is falling in the States, and the only thing that makes them interesting is their proximity to the royal family. And now the King is ill, Harry has even offered to muck in and take on official duties to help his father. Look, I want to see reconciliation and love and joy, but I'm afraid Meghan has yet to even speak to her father as far as we know, and Harry didn't apparently even reach out to his brother. Whilst his dad might fall for it, I doubt William will be as soft. Good luck with that, Harry.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It's 17 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time now for Climate Control, where we unpick the debate around the climate. Farmers in Wales are warning that their industry will be at risk if the Welsh Government's plans go ahead with proposed changes to farming subsidies. Outside the Welsh Parliament, they protested against plans which require 20% of their agricultural land to be set aside for environmental initiatives. The Welsh Labour government insists that the changes are necessary to fight climate change, but also conceded that the plan could still be adjusted at the end of a consultation. Unions warn that there'll be thousands of job losses. So is this really necessary? I'm joined now by Donica McCarthy, Director of the Climate Media Coalition, and also climate scientist Paul Burgess. Donica, I'm going to come to you first. Is this really necessary?
Absolutely. What's quite extraordinary about this, of course, is Welsh farmers voted for Brexit. What has Brexit done? It's done two things. First of all, it meant a £1.1 billion cut to the Welsh Government's budget, including £250 million for rural affairs. So that's £250 million out of the rural Welsh economy. And second, it set an end to subsidies for doing nothing. Under the European system, farmers in Wales got 67% of their income from the government for doing nothing. Sheep farmers up to 88%. And so what now the government is doing is you must do something in return. And what they must do in return is a number of things for Wales. Wales got a problem with flooding, and what additional trees do to farms, it retains the water on the farm so the flooding doesn't hit the downstream towns, and in drought it retains water in the land so there's some moisture there for the crops and for the society at large. So what they're asking them to do, for example, at the moment 7% of farms are covered in woodland. They're asking them to increase that to 10%, and they're asking for 10% of land for habitat. Well, this is really good news. The problem is the UK government has cut the budget by £250 million, so the Welsh government has to cut and tail because of that.
All right, Paul Burgess.
Well, it's irrelevant, the money and the Brexit. I'm not going to go into that and waste time on that. The net effect of all this, the net effect is that farms are losing up to 20% of their land, right? And they're losing 10% on forestry and 10% on wilding. Now, these small farms, really, that makes them uneconomic. Now, what I'd like to ask is, what is the benefit of this? What is the benefit of doing that 20% off? And they don't give you a benefit. On the other side of this argument, there is no... Well, I want to know the mathematics of how... No, let me finish.
So
I didn't interrupt you. The mathematics, what are they? Just how many degrees centigrade, or 10,000th of 1 degree centigrade, will we actually save in the future from this? So if you're going to take action to take property away from people, and that's what they're doing in Wales, and they've made it clear there's no compromise. No compromise. Our leader, Mark Drakeford, has made that absolutely clear. They're up in arms, the farmers in Wales, and they really, it's a survival thing. And this is only the beginning of this madness. It's only the beginning. They've basically got no right to come into a farm and say, you do this and you do that, unless they can show a clear benefit. And there is no calculation, nothing is done, no cost-benefit analysis. So that's the point. What right have they got to do it without pointing out the benefit? And by the way, we need more CO2, not less. And the methane...
But surely if they plant more trees,
yes,
that will provide more CO2, would it not?
No, it sequesters it. It pulls it in for temporary until the tree's done away with at the end of its life. So and as regards the flooding that was mentioned, by the way, it happened to be the water resource engineer for Wales in charge of that particular thing. And as the Met Office said in their report, there is no evidence of more flooding and so on. As the IPC say, again, worldwide there's none. So all that's a myth. So under these myths and this religion of climate change, and it's a religion we're fighting here. It's a doctrine, and they don't quantify it. Now, I've just done a video. I'm sorry for the language, but it's called "Are Farts Dangerous?" And if people go on YouTube, "Are Farts Dangerous?" by you Paul Burgess, you'll find it because it's a pretty unique title. And it explains methane. When you double methane, you can't even measure the difference to warming. You can't even measure it. And when you double CO2, you get 0.7 of a degree. But that's without the mitigation of clouds, etc. So all of that's in that video. It's a myth. All of this is a myth.
So you're saying that it's not really necessary to grow more trees, because that's what they're saying. This is to sort of help with the future effects, potentially, of climate change. I think they must mean lots of flooding, and these
There's no evidence.
There's no evidence, he says.
The Met Office has said for every degree rise in temperature, there's a 7% rise in moisture held in the atmosphere. This winter has been the wettest winter ever in UK history.
Since how long were those records recorded?
17th century.
So you're saying the water... Some farmers...
From
the 17th century, is this true?
No, let me finish. Some farmers have up to 5 metres flooding.
No, you don't understand. When I say, be quiet, you stop talking, because we're going to come back to that. So he said the 17th century, the records were measured for flooding. Is that for rainfall? Did you say rainfall?
Yeah, rainfall.
Is that correct?
Well, yes, but they have been measured a long time, but not accurately for rainfall. But what matters is the flooding. Right, flooding depends on many, many factors. For example, when you urbanise a place, you're going to get quicker runoff from flooding, etc. If you improve flood protection for a town, all you've done is move the water faster downstream, so you can cause more flooding. So it's a much more complex thing than measuring a drought, for example. But the worst weather, if we're going to go to the 17th, 18th century, the worst droughts were then by a mile. The worst weather was then by a mile. And even, let me finish this, with the Met Office, they're just in trouble at the moment because they are in total denial about something. They went on air and said a recent storm was to do with climate, and they were asked to give the evidence for that under a freedom of information, and the information wasn't there. It proved the opposite. Their annual report said the 80s, and I've used it on this show before, I've read it out, the 80s and 90s were far more frequent storms and far more severe.
OK, so...
And now they deny it.
All right, OK. So back to you, Donica.
Thank you. I said it was the wettest winter ever. You turned around to him and asked him, was it the wettest winter? He didn't answer your question.
No, he did. No, he did.
Ask him then.
No, he did answer it, and he said that it was wet in that time as well. So carry on.
No, he said
there were lots of...
the records went back to the 17th century, and he said the weather was bad in those days. He didn't say that this was not the wettest winter ever.
Okay.
The second thing...
Are you going to say, was it the worst winter? Is this the wettest winter
No, I don't think it is. But can I just say, we just had the Tonga...
No, you're not going to say anymore.
OK.
Yeah, OK, I think that's the answer. It is the wettest winter ever, according to the Met Office. The second point is that we actually
since the 1700s,
that's right,
since we've recorded.
Yeah, fair point. The second point is actually something we agree on. He actually said if you channel the water off the farms down river, you flood the towns.
I didn't say that.
Now, one of the things that what woods do...
No, he said that it moves further down.
Faster.
Flood protection.
It moves it down, so he's actually talking flood protection. What's the best form of flood protection is nature. And the more woods you have, the more you trap the water upriver, upstream, up in the valleys. And what the government in Wales is doing, it's going to pay the farmers for retaining the woodlands that they have currently and increasing the 7% to 10%. So they're being paid to do something.
So why are they up in arms about it?
Well, most people, if
why would they upset?
If I was being paid 88% of my income for doing nothing for the last 20 years, I'd be unhappy if the government changed it, wouldn't you?
No, look, for a start, on the floods, you've got no evidence at all. As regards the wettest winter, can I just say this? About 2 years ago, we put up 12% more moisture in the atmosphere than the Tonga underwater volcano. We put an enormous amount of water vapor.
So is it the wettest winter ever?
No, I don't know, actually. I haven't looked that up.
Well,
I'm almost certain it isn't. But that's weather anyway. If it was, that's weather. That's weather.
Know.
It's not climate.
Thank you.
Pattern of wetness is climate.
Yes.
A pattern of heat is climate.
And the Met Office
You're quoting weather. No, the Met Office are a voice. The Met Office won't even own up to their own annual report, which says 80s and 90s far worse storms than now. And now, when they're asked to prove it, they refuse to apologise. So, that's how bad they are. We have a woke Met Office, not fit for purpose, but they've got a lot of high-paid jobs on it.
The wonderful thing about what the Welsh Government is doing is addressing major crises. So it's addressing the climate crisis, addressing the soil crisis, addressing the wood crisis, and addressing wildlife. Wales is the 7th worst deprived wildlife nation on earth. Almost all of its wildlife is gone. Why? Because they demolished all the woodlands on the uplands and they replaced them with sheep. And the sheep industry is 100% dependent on state subsidy to survive. There are 9.4 million sheep in Wales. Our taxes are subsidising, and we're exporting to France.
Yeah, but that's all very well. But the farmers who actually do the job and live on the land are saying that the steps that the government are taking will wreck their industry. That's what they're saying, and that is the concern.
That's right.
And these are the farmers. These are the people on the land.
They're stealing the land. They're stealing the land. And they're pretending there's a problem on floods that isn't there, by the way. They're pretending a problem on floods. And you can't quote weather incidents anyway. A single winter's weather is not climate. You've got to understand that. And floods are not worse. And by the way, if you were doing it on flood protection, and I was involved in the Plinlimmon big investigation in mid-Wales, where we set up whole areas studying the effect of forestry on floods, etc. I've gone into this. I was in charge. I used to pick up a red telephone and wake up a whole valley. My point is that there's no evidence there, and if there was going to be flooding, like you say, you put it in particular areas, but there's no rule to do that. You can put the woodlands anywhere.
20 seconds,
the sheep industry at the moment is an old industry that is dependent on hundreds of millions of pounds of state subsidy. That has got to come to an end, and we need for the government to pay farmers to do something that's positive for Wales, protect its soil, protect its woodland, and protect its wildlife.
Well, if what they are doing was beneficial to the farmers and the farmers were happy, they wouldn't be protesting and saying that it's going to cost more than 5,000 jobs. So it will be interesting to follow that. Donica McCarthy and also Paul Burgess, thank you very much. Right, it's just coming up to 3:30. It's GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, my political spotlight, where joining me to shine a light is Reform UK's London mayoral candidate, Howard Cox. I'll be speaking to him about the campaign to keep fuel duty frozen. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon. These are your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Dozens of pro-Palestine marches are taking place in towns and cities across the UK this weekend after Rishi Sunak called on organisers not to let extremists hijack protests. In his speech delivered from Downing Street last night, he called for the nation to unite, warning that Islamist extremists and far-right groups are spreading poison and trying to tear us apart. It followed George Galloway's controversial win in the Rochdale by-election this week, which the Prime Minister described as beyond alarming. The US military has carried out its first airdrop of aid into Gaza. It comes after the deaths of Palestinians queuing for food brought renewed attention to the growing humanitarian catastrophe. President Biden says he hopes to see a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas before the start of Ramadan on the 10th of March. A fashion show hosted by Victoria Beckham at Paris Fashion Week was disrupted yesterday by the animal rights group PETA. Activists were seen taking to the stage during the show and walking the runway alongside the models, holding signs that said "Viva Vegan Leather." The group explained that while Ms Beckham's fashion brand has stopped using fur and exotic skins, they claim it still uses leather obtained via methods it says are cruel. The group has also targeted brands including Burberry and Fendi. The show continued after the protest. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. Coming up, it's Political Spotlight, where joining me to shine a light is Reform UK London mayoral candidate Howard Cox will be discussing the campaign to freeze the fuel duty. But next, as a transgender murderer will be sent to a male prison for her crimes, but have them recorded as a woman, is identity politics destroying our justice system? Stay tuned.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Yeah, so describe the contents of the letter for us, because it is quite strongly worded, isn't it? And it suggests that your property is empty. And what do they suggest it's going to be used for?
They say, as part of this process, Northamptonshire Council is identifying empty properties and sites within the area, with the aim of encouraging owners to bring premises back into use or to find alternative options for derelict sites. The resettlement team in Northamptonshire Council supports asylum seekers and refugees across 3 different projects: Homes for Ukraine, Afghan resettlement and asylum dispersal. At present, we are seeing a considerable increase in positive immigration decisions being made in favour of asylum seekers. So basically, they're wanting accommodation. But who goes around and assesses whether these properties are lived in or they are actually empty?
Clearly, Ted, no one had bothered to come and look at your house at all, had they?
What do you want now? Because clearly you are both very shaken by this letter, and that letter that you received in response has not gone far enough. Do you want an apology? What more do you want to see?
Well, she said here that she's, I sincerely apologise, this Lindsay Bellchambers, but I don't see, there was no explanation as to how they've come to say this property was empty, whether it was disused, whether it was unkempt, or what. If you go back through the history of the property, it's not been empty.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
On
Mark Dolan tonight. Prince Harry has lost his case against the Home Office for royal protection when he's in the UK. I'll be giving my verdict on whether the prodigal prince should have the same security as a serving royal. Plus, is antidepressant medication a scam? I'll be asking a top expert who says popping the pills isn't always the answer. Plus, my pundits, Mark Meets, and tomorrow's papers. We're live at 9.
Good afternoon. It's coming up to 37 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine. It's early on in the programme. You've only missed a half an hour or so. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Now, this was a story that I was reading and I literally hadn't realised until the end that, voila, is actually not a biological woman. It's the crimes of a transgender cat killer and murderer, which will officially be recorded as being committed by a woman. Now, please confirm that Scarlett Blake will be sent to a male prison, but the murder of George Carrero will be recorded as carried out by a woman. Joining me now is Dr. Pam Spur, relationship psychologist. Pam, thank you so much for joining me. See, now, I remember reading the initial piece in The Guardian and going, I do, on the odd occasion, read The Guardian. I know, it's a rag. But I read it, and there was no mention of the fact that this person was transgender at all. What on earth is going on?
Well, I think there's been a number of high-profile and horrific cases that have really piqued the public. And as you say, the man who identified as Scarlett Blake, who tortured and killed a cat and then murdered a woman, thankfully is going to be put into a men's prison. But will he ultimately have his crime recorded as female? I'm not sure if they've decided. But listen to this statistic, Nana. Let's take the violent crime of attempted murder. That is so rare that even one man who identifies as a trans woman, if that criminal is recorded as a woman, it raises the female stats by 5%.
Yeah.
So it really skews the data. We have to have accurate sex-based reporting of crimes, and for many other reasons.
Well, didn't she murder a man? Because I thought this person murdered a man, which is why, again, it sort of stuck out like I thought. I just thought you said woman there. But yeah, he that's the thing. Is that yeah, so and when I heard that, I thought, well, that sounds odd. A woman who's done something horrible to the cat and then also murdered a man. This is some strong woman. It doesn't make any sense, Pam. Why is this being pushed? Because to me, why not record the biological reality?
Well, this is what we're pushing for right now. And a number of journalists, one of my friends, comprised an incredible letter that's going out to all editors across the media, saying it is not against the law to report crimes and other issues in the press with sex-based reporting. Because when people, it's even as something like if police put out an all-points bulletin saying a woman fled a park, and this happened like 18 months ago, having raped a teenager, even witnesses think, well, who am I looking for? How did a woman rape a teenager in a park? So it can disrupt witness accounts. And when it gets the opposite end, when a case gets to court, think of the victim and their families feeling abused once again if they're asked to talk about my rapist was a woman. Well, that's just not the case.
Well, also, I thought also the crime of rape could only be committed by a male anyway. So it's penetration, isn't it? And a woman, we don't have the apparatus to behave in that manner in any case. So
exactly, yeah. Women have been asked to respect the gender of their rapist, the way the rapist IDs as a woman. So it's quite shocking what victims of violent crimes like rape have been put through in court. And also now, I've got to tell you, the overall statistics show from the Ministry of Justice to the MOJ stats show that men who identify as trans women have the propensity for male-type violence. And when it comes to sexual offences, 60%...
I think we're just losing, Pam.
Men who are identifying trans women That is compared to 17% of men who do not ID as women. So there's a higher propensity for the trans women, as they call themselves, who end up in prison, to have committed sexual offences. And we have to be aware of this.
What is the problem with these people being called trans women? I don't understand what the issue is. If it is a trans woman who is biologically male, why can that person not be I mean, I would even say trans person. That way there's no, you know, that way you've kept it completely generic and there's no crossover and there's no thing that doesn't make any sense. Why are they so afraid of being labelled as transgender when that's what they are? I don't understand.
Well, because that confuses. Now, you are an educated woman, so you understand when you're talking about trans identities, right? The average member of the public thinks, oh, so a trans woman killed a cat and then murdered a man, and yeah, I guess a trans woman is a woman. So they get confused. So they're confusing male violence, which is not our crimes. We do not need men's crimes labeled with ours, which is why I totally believe it must be sex-based reporting, sex-based in court, and sex-based when police put out bulletins. We need to know the sex of the criminal that we are dealing with.
Yeah, Dr. Pam Spur, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That, of course, is Dr. Pam Spur. What are your views on that? Are we sick and tired of all this confusion that's been put in place when to you and I it's simple male and female, that's it? But what do you think? 42 minutes after 3 o'clock, this is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. If you just joined me, no worries, we've got still loads to come. My monologue on Suella Braverman's fears that she could be criminalised for her views on gender. But next, it's time for Political Spotlight, where joining me to shine a light is Reform UK's London mayoral candidate, Howard Cox. We'll talk about his quest to pressure number 10 into keeping the fuel duty frozen. This is GB News.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem, up until now, that in some areas, foreign care workers come in, but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it, because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome on board. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget as well, you can stream the show live on YouTube. It's time now, though, for this week's Political Spotlight. And joining me to shine a light is Reform UK's mayoral candidate, Howard Cox. Now, this week, he delivered a petition to Downing Street. The founder of Fair Fuel UK had 126,000 signatures in support of keeping fuel duty frozen. Fair Fuel UK has been successful in preventing 14 years of planned fuel duty rises and getting the government to adopt Pump Watch for transparent and honest pump prices, and even influenced the petrol and diesel new car sales ban being moved to 2035. I'm pleased to say that Howard Cox, founder of Fair Fuel UK and Reform UK's London mayoral candidate, joins me now. Howard, thank you very much. Right, talk to me about this then, Howard. What is going on? What's going on?
Well, good afternoon, Nana. It's really great to be on your show. Yeah, it's simple. For 14, 15 years, we managed to keep fuel duty frozen by the objective campaigning and proving to the government that actually lower fuel costs actually stimulate the economy, reduce the inflation, encourage investment and increase GDP. It's a no-brainer. Everyone knows if you've got more money in your pocket, you're going to spend it, give it to businesses who are going to pay more growth taxes in corporation tax. So we've done the same thing again, but this time I'm really pleased to say I had 40 heavyweight politicians behind it, 37 MPs and 3 top lords, including people like Lord David Frost. I've got John Redwood. There's all sorts of people that have come out and said, look, don't put up fuel duty. In fact, most of them said, please cut it.
What's going on with your Pump Watch then? Because that was something that you were trying to get going, and you've now got the government to adopt it. What does it mean to me, a normal motorist on the road in my little C1, 180,000 miles? 180,000 miles it's done. It's like a skip inside.
I bet you it's as reliable as anything. It's much more reliable than EP anyway. To cut, what Pump Watch was all about. For 7 or 8 years of the campaigning I've been doing, I've called for a sort of a consumer price regulatory body. We've got Ofcom, we've got Ofwatch, we've got Ofgem, we've got all those sort of bodies. But for 37 million drivers, including you, there is no price transparency in terms of, you know what happens when oil goes up or goes down. We just have no idea what that impact will have on the prices we pay at the pumps. So I called for something that will give transparency and honesty without hitting too much of the profits of the poor people, the retailers and the fuel supply chain. And I'm glad to say that Claire Coutinho, the Minister of Energy, I met with, and she said she was very pleased with my proposal. They've adopted it. At the moment, it's a voluntary scheme. So let's see how the fuel supply chain adopt it and implement it, because prices are becoming a little bit more flatter and more consistent across the country. There's still a long way off where I want them to be and you want them to be, as we know, especially in places like motorway service stations where they're 20 to 25p more than anywhere else. But it is on board. At least they're listening. The annoying thing at the moment, of course, we've got a general election coming on. And I know, obviously, we know that Labour's going to win this election, and they are truly anti-motorist.
Well, it might not win, but it does look like it. But then, to be fair to the Labour Party, I don't think the Conservative Party were adopting anything different at all, were they? They're all going along with this 2035 thing that, thankfully, to people like you, it's got pushed back a little bit. But they are still struggling to sell the EVs. But speaking of Sadiq Khan, though, his LTNs, is he now rolling back on the LTN plan that he had? Because I know he's installed them somewhere and the people simply aren't happy, and I think he's agreeing with you.
Well, there is a tacit admission we're seeing that they're realising LTNs, all they're doing is moving the traffic elsewhere, causing more congestion, therefore more emissions, all the sorts of things any common sense like you and I would recognise and he should listen to. But obviously, you know what he's like. He's got a huge ego, and the man will, to admit that he's wrong, I'm sorry, it's going to take a lot longer. The only way we can do anything about this is to vote for me on May the 2nd.
But Sadiq Khan would say that actually it's not his ego, and what he's doing is realising that if something isn't working, he's got the ability to change it, and he's not a fixed thinker. Which is a good quality, and actually the first time I've seen it in him ever. But that's just me. Maybe he does a lot of it.
No, well, you're right. I mean, obviously, I've followed him very closely for while he's been in office, and all his calls is misery for motorists. And to be fair, misery to those streets where all the traffic's been diverted to. It's lovely living in an LTN, but equally, you can't, like an Uber, a taxi driver, can't take youngsters home at night to their front door because they get fined going through there. So there's a safety issue as well. There's all sorts of connotations, Nana. And from my point of view, yeah, if he reverses this, I'll put my hands together. I'll be the first person to applaud him. But I'm afraid I can't see that happening.
Yeah, but, but that's... Hopefully he will see the light. Maybe he might see the light for his congestion charge as well, the extended ULEZ that nobody really wants. And I don't know, is it working for him? What's happening with that?
Well, it's working and generating huge amounts of money for him and TfL. Yes, it's got massive money coming in. But in terms of actually improving the quality of air we breathe, there's hardly any difference. And he was told about that on August the 29th when he introduced it, that any expansion of ULEZ to the M25 will not cause any demonstrable increase in air quality, the air we breathe. And yet he still went ahead with it.
But, of course, a Labour government, this wouldn't be a London thing. I mean, they are spreading wider. And, of course, the Labour government, I think it was Angela Rayner that committed to or spoke of expanding them all properly throughout the country.
Well, clean air zones are happening everywhere, right across the country, as you're absolutely right. It's only Manchester, to Andy Burnham has said he's not introducing it. But there are, I mean, everyone's queuing up because guess what? These cash-strapped councils have got no money, and guess how you can get it? From the motorists. They're always there, like in this budget. I mean, cars and motorists, they contribute nearly £60 billion a year to the Exchequer. They're the 5th largest income supplier to Jeremy Hunt. So this time, it's give it a break and put more money into people's pockets. That's all they've got to do, and watch the economy flourish. In fact, I'm challenging him, Nana, to actually cut it by a massive 20 pence. And I tell you what that would do. Do it just until the general election. See what happens. Like when we cut fuel VAT many moons ago, about 6 or 7 years ago, we cut VAT and had an experiment on it. If it doesn't work, I'll hold up my hands. But it will work because it'll put something like £12 into every family car filling up into their pockets, and they will spend that, and it will go into the economy, and inflation will plummet.
And finally, I wanted to ask you about the DVSA recalling 500 public transport buses due to they're potentially about to blow up or ignite. These are electric buses or EVs, yeah?
Yeah, these are electric buses. That's right. What the DVSA are worried about the safety. We've seen 3 or 4 of these happens in bus stations and on the road, just spontaneously combusting. And what the point is, these were introduced too quickly without the proper critical, safety analysis. They didn't do that. And now that's why the DVSA is saying we can't risk this. It's happening around the world, by the way. It's not just these buses. But TfL, and each of these buses cost £450,000, nearly £500,000.
Wow.
Compared to a diesel bus, which is about 2. Yes, that's right. £450,000.
What?
Yes, that's it, Nana. Yes, I know. But that's what they are. And so those are the sorts of things. I contributed to help with this article. I think the Mail were coming out with it. And what's happening is, quite rightly, I would like a moratorium on all electric buses right across the UK until they're proven they're safer for passengers.
Well, listen, Howard Cox, really good to talk to you. That is, of course, Howard Cox. He is the mayoral candidate for Reform UK. Thank you for your thoughts, Howard. Thank you for joining me. That, of course, was my political spotlight. Well, listen, stay tuned, because coming up, I'll be joined by my amazing panel, trade unionist Andy MacDonald, also broadcast from columnist Lizzie Cundy, and, of course, I will be delivering my monologue on Suella Braverman's fears that she could be criminalised for her views on gender. Stay tuned, don't go anywhere. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. It's time to get an update with your weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We still have areas of rain, sleet and snow pushing northward through today. Frost and fog and some icy stretches for tonight, and staying quite cold, and we can see that nicely on the air mass chart. This pool of cold air sat over the UK, something milder trying to come in by the beginning of next week, but a cold weekend to come. For the rest of the afternoon into the evening time, we've got these areas, outbreaks of rain, sleet and snow pushing northwards across northern England and Scotland, perhaps affecting parts of Northern Ireland too, are covering over the high ground. Overnight, clearing skies, particularly across central and southern parts of England and Wales. We could see some dense fog patches, some frost and icy stretches as temperatures fall below freezing here. So a bright start in some places, drier than it was on Saturday morning, but some dense fog patches, particularly across central southern England. This slowly lifting and breaking through the day. And then overall, Sunday will be a bright day, some sunny spells, scattered showers across western areas, again a bit wintry over the higher ground. This weather front could give some thicker cloud across the far east of the country. Temperatures quite cool still, 7 to 9 Celsius, but in any sunshine, not feeling too bad. And then for Monday, a cold and frosty start, some fog patches, and then that mild air starts to come in, but in association with this area of rain across southern and southwestern areas. Over the next few days, it brightens up a little. There'll be some sunny spells and temperatures start to rise as well, back into double figures, particularly in the south.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
(2024), a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like anyone who talks about, anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... They're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... Yeah. I mean, this is learning stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if you
no,
say that, will they?
Because
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, I'm the unfashionable workplace.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It's just 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled So joining me today is trade unionist and political commentator Andy MacDonald and also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. In a few moments' time, my monologue on Suella Braverman's concerns that she could be criminalised for her views on gender. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Dozens of pro-Palestine marches are taking place in towns and cities across the UK this weekend after Rishi Sunak called on organisers not to let extremists hijack protests. In his speech delivered from Downing Street last night, he called for the nation to unite, warning that Islamist extremists and far-right groups are spreading poison and trying to tear us apart. It followed George Galloway's controversial win in the Rochdale by-election this week, which the Prime Minister described as beyond alarming.
The Rochdale by-election returned a candidate who dismisses the horror of what happened on October the 7th, who glorifies Hezbollah and is endorsed by Nick Griffin, the racist former leader of the BNP. I need to speak to you all this evening because this situation has gone on long enough and demands a response not just from government, but from all of us.
The US military has carried out its first airdrop of aid into Gaza. It comes after the deaths of Palestinians queuing for food brought renewed attention to the growing humanitarian catastrophe. President Biden says he hopes to see a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas before the start of Ramadan on the 10th of March. Police are investigating after 3 people were injured in a shooting in an area of London popular with bars and restaurants. The shots were discharged when a shotgun was dropped by suspects on a moped as they were being pursued by police in Clapham, South London, at around 5 o'clock last night. 2 people were injured by shotgun pellets as they were drinking at a nearby pub. A 3rd person was injured by the moped itself. Police say the injuries are not life-threatening. A cargo ship, which was abandoned in the Red Sea after a Houthi missile strike attack off the coast of Yemen, has now sunk. It's come after reports from UK's maritime agency suggest that the militant group backed by Iran have attacked another vessel off the coast of Yemen. The UK, US and EU all have military ships patrolling the region to protect commercial vessels passing through the important shipping route. A fashion show hosted by Victoria Beckham at Paris Fashion Week was disrupted yesterday by the animal rights group PETA. Activists were seen taking to the stage during the show and walking the runway alongside the models, holding signs that said "Viva Vegan Leather." The group explained that while Ms Beckham's fashion brand has stopped using fur and exotic skins, they claim it still uses leather obtained via methods it says are cruel. The group has also targeted brands including Burberry and Fendi. The show did continue after the protest. Now, a part of the famous sycamore gap tree is to be made part of a permanent display. The much-loved 200-year-old tree was a popular attraction for visitors to Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland, but it was found cut down in mysterious circumstances in September last year, sparking a national outcry. The largest section of the tree will now form part of a display at the Sill Discovery Centre near Newcastle. 60-mile-per-hour limits are to be scrapped along parts of the M1 and M6 after a test of greener driving speeds. Drivers can now return to the national speed limit of 70 miles per hour after some improvements to air quality. Cars had been forced to slow down on the 2 motorways in the Midlands since 2021 in an effort to see if driving more slowly would reduce emissions. Fashion icon Iris Apfel has died at her home in Florida at the age of 102. Known for her distinctive glasses and fun, no-nonsense approach to fashion, she founded the luxury company Old World Weavers with her husband in 1950 and went on to lead a long career in fashion. At the age of 97, she signed a major modelling contract with global agency IMG just a year after a limited edition Barbie doll was created in her image. And the best of Britain's music industry are gathering in London for this year's Brit Awards, including the Princess of Pop.
Everybody's doing a brand new dance now. Come on, baby,
Singing superstar Kylie Minogue will be crowned this year's global icon. She'll perform a medley of some of her greatest hits. Leading the main awards, however, is Ray, who's already broken records with 7 nominations, the most in a single year. She's up against some stiff competition, though, with Dua Lipa and Olivia Dean also up for key awards. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm just so fed up of this. Here we go again, and my concern is that this will be made worse under Labour, which, if the polls are to be believed, is inevitable, although none of the main parties deserve to win. The other day, Suella Braverman pointed out that she fears that she could be criminalised if trans conversion therapy is banned because she, like me and probably over 90% of the British public and the rest of the world, teaches her children that a boy cannot be a girl and vice versa.
In my view, in our household, in my family, we believe that a man cannot be a woman, a boy cannot be a girl. And that is what I would be telling my children, with the best intentions and from a place of love. And if that were to criminalise me, that would be a crying shame and a total undermining of good parenting in this country.
So, for example, if a male child comes to you and says that they think that they might be a girl and you say that's not biologically possible, or you dissuade them from the belief or suggest otherwise, this could be seen as conversion therapy, which, if it were banned, would mean that you would have broken the law. However well-meaning this is meant to be, in my view, it works in reverse when it comes to enabling children under the age of 18 to socially or medically transition. Because if there's one thing that I keep hearing from detransitioners, it's that they wish the adults in the room had stopped them. But then some adults appear hell-bent on going along with all of this, irrespective of how ludicrous it sounds. Take notorious transgender prisoner Tiffany Scott, aged 32, who was taken unwell in their cell and died on Thursday. Tiffany died a year after being denied a proposed move to a woman's prison. The transfer was only blocked after the Isla Bryson scandal. Tiffany, otherwise known as Adam Burns, was thought to be one of the UK's most violent inmates and was incarcerated in a Scottish prison. Now, the fact that this was even considered, that this person should be anywhere near a female prison, is ridiculous. And even as I read about this, the language is absurd. We were made aware of a 32-year-old woman taken unwell at HMP Grampian. She was taken to Aberdeen Royal Infirmary where she died. She is a biological male, like the cat killer and murderer who apparently dissected the animal and then murdered a man. The Guardian initially reported this, making no reference to the fact that this person was not female and that they were transgender. When I read the story, yeah, I read The Guardian on occasion, I thought, that's some mightily strong woman. It simply didn't sound right. But then it turned out that they were, of course, a trans woman, so a biological man. Even pharmaceutical giant AstraZeneca got into a bit of bother over its sex is not binary training material, which was apparently distributed by some managers and employees on their intranet system. The material stated that biology has a spectrum and classifying a person as either male or female fails to capture even the biological aspect of gender. A former employee said this of AstraZeneca, that it was the most extreme company that I have ever worked with in terms of gender identity ideology. Well, a spokesperson for AstraZeneca said, at AstraZeneca, our aim is to cultivate inclusion and belonging by fostering an environment where everyone feels valued and heard and respected. We are muddying the waters of reality and confusing a generation of people who need clarity and guidance. A man can never be a woman, and a woman can never be a man. I will continue to say this until I am blue in the face. Right, before we get stuck into debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak right? Is our democracy under threat? Now, this comes as both Islamists and the far right loathe Britain. Is he right? Then at 4:50, it's Royal Roundup time. Lady Victoria Hervey will be here with the latest from behind the palace walls. On the menu, the Princess of Wales's illness. What does she have, and is she OK? Lady Victoria has a scoop. We'll be finding out from her. And then at 5, it's this week's Difficult Conversation. Jason Gale will be live in the studio to discuss the challenges facing the hospitality industry and what his project is doing to help. Now, that's coming up in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy and also trade unionist Andy MacDonald. Right, I'm going to start with you, Lizzie Cundy, looking pretty in pink.
Well, thank you, and you look absolutely spectacular today, Nana. You really do. You remind me of Wonder Woman, and you do as well, darling. Sorry, I don't want to leave you out.
Thank you.
Look, I'm getting sick to death of this. I am getting sick to death of it. Can we deal with biological facts? You're either born a boy and you are a boy, and you're born a girl. So Keir Starmer, who still won't say what a woman is. This is frightening.
Well, he did admit, actually.
Well, he did finally, after being asked how many times. But look, can we deal with biological facts? Please. I mean, I'm scared to actually sometimes speak out about this because I get intimidated and silenced because everyone just jumps on you for talking about this. And look, the trans community need to be treated with kindness and understanding. But please, can we all just deal with facts?
Yeah, well, Andy, what do you think? Like, I keep going on about it. I go along about it because it's important and I'm just not going to let it go.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's an honourable crusade, what you're doing, but on the story specifically, conversion therapy, that is objectively a bad thing. There's a difference between being a dissuading parent going, oh, are you really sure? And then what a lot of conversion therapy actually is. You know, conversion therapy is objectively bad, whether it's homosexual conversion therapy or transgender conversion therapy. That is bad.
What? So, but
it's used to abuse young trans individuals.
No,
it is.
Nobody's saying that it's not. Yeah, but conversion therapy would be. So, if you thought that you were a woman, Andy, which you're not, by the way, just so you know.
And I didn't claim to be. I didn't claim to be.
And I said that to you, and you thought you were. Then me talking to you, about it is me converting. I'm now. If this were applied to transgender, because like I said, it's well-meaning, but I said it doesn't. I don't think it should apply to trans people because if I speak to you in a well-meaning way and say, but you're not biologically, you are a male. I am now embarking on that therapy, on conversion therapy. That's what Suella is saying.
Well, I think Suella is taking it completely out of context.
Well, no,
the legislation is about conversion therapy, the abusive conversion therapy.
Suella is a lawyer.
She wasn't a lawyer for very long.
No, but
she's been a career politician for a long time. When was the last time that she practiced law?
She's trained as a lawyer, and she's pointing out things that how in law they can be interpreted.
There are plenty of trained lawyers that get things wrong. Just because someone's trained as a lawyer doesn't mean they have a slick understanding of the legislative process.
She's pointing out an interpretation of conversion therapy that maybe we haven't considered when we're applying it to transgender people.
Sure, but I'm convinced that there have been many interpretations of very many legislations throughout history. It doesn't mean that they're applied.
Well,
just because she's interpreted it that way doesn't mean that it will be applied in that manner.
But it could be. It could be, and that's why she's saying it. It could be applied in that way, and that's the danger. Just like Isla Bryson, people said, she said, oh, that's never going to happen. Nicola Sturgeon said it's never going to happen. Nobody's going to take that, and then it happened.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. Yeah. It really is. And I read a really interesting article actually by the photographer David Bailey's son, who was thinking about transitioning. He was in his early teens, and he said, thankfully, he realised he was going through adolescence, but he spoke to two close adult friends who were saying, look, this isn't the right thing, you're just going through adolescence. And he said they were completely right. And he's so grateful for that. Looking back, it's an amazing article. And, this is, you've got to realise this is biological facts. It's actually quite dangerous as well. I mean, men if you give a man beetroot, it affects you very differently to what you do for a woman with all their blood pressure and other things. There are so many things medically as well, which is, a real slippery slope. And I really agree with Suella. I'm with her all the way on this.
Can you not see, Andy, that whilst it is well-meaning, and no one's saying that it isn't, But the point is that when it is applied to somebody who's trans, and you as a parent, to me as a parent talking to my daughter, if she, you know, she's young, she may be going through adolescence, which a lot of them end up saying, I was going through adolescence, I wish I hadn't done all this to myself. Even just to get her to wait for a bit longer till she's a teen, over that age, then she can do what she likes. Surely it should be, that needs to be considered.
Well, yeah, but again, the legislation is designed for those kind of extreme fundamentalists, whether it's churches or mosques or whomever, these extreme fundamentalists that go, I don't think gay people should exist, I don't think trans people should exist, so we're going to send you to a specific conversion therapy programme. This is what that legislation is designed to combat against. Well, and I think it's quite just reductive of Suella to kind of go, oh, well, it'll destroy my ability to conversate with my son or daughter, but it doesn't.
But you see, OK, so the reason why, OK, so I think that these two things are being conflated because one is a sexual orientation where one is actually an actual biological thing, right? So sexual orientation, people should be free to do whatever they like in terms of sexual orientation, and nobody should be converting or doing. So I think that is clear to me. That is absolutely clear. It's not for me to tell you, oh, you shouldn't be gay, because it's up to you. Yeah. But when you're talking about biological reality, when someone believes that they're a man and they're not, and you're saying to them they're not, that can be seen as conversion therapy. And I think that's the difference.
Well, but that's not what the legislation is designed for.
No, but
the legislation is designed for those extreme programmes. That's what it's designed for. Her interpretation is wrong.
It will encompass those things.
I doubt anybody's going to have a policeman knocking on the door going, you told your child they can't be trans, you're going to prison.
How do you know? Do you see now this trans thing is
I can assure you, they won't be doing that.
Have you seen the way it's been moving? Riley Gaines, listen, Riley Gaines had to actually paid an athlete who refused to take part in an event because this man was going to take it apart and against a woman. Right, we can see there's a 6-foot-tall Leah Thomas against a woman, and people are saying, these two women can compete against each other. Sure. Anybody with a brain in their head would look and say that's ridiculous, but they're not seeing that. That's the point. They're not seeing what is ridiculous.
But you can see, I mean, you're biologically, men are stronger. It's like me playing football against my ex-husband, you know. It's madness.
Well, it is madness. Let's see what the viewers think, though. GBNews and GBNews.com. Get in touch now. Hopefully I can read some of those out after the break. We're live on TV, online on digital radio on the way. We'll round up time. Lady Victoria Hervey will be here to give us the latest from behind the palace walls. But up next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak right? Is our democracy under threat? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Is Rishi Sunak right? Is our democracy under threat? You can email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners, and Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do. If
or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because You know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences that I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you. I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it, rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It is fast approaching 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is at GB News at... let's have a look at what you've been saying. Suddenly thought, what's going on? Where am I? Who are you people? Right, so let's see what we were saying. I had a monologue. We talked about Suella Braverman. Mike says it's about time the country returned to reality. Suella Braverman speaks the truth, and the only people disagreeing are people that don't want to hear it. Fingers in ears. Just because we don't like it doesn't mean it's untrue. And Tony says, how about doing away with men's prisons and women's prisons and having prisons for people with a penis and prisons for people with a vagina? We can extend this to toilets and changing rooms. Yeah, but what if they've had and they've changed it, but it's not really a real one, is it? John says, I think, given the woke state of our judiciary, Suella's fears are probably justified. Yeah, I think she's right. Right, well, now it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. Thank you for those. Keep them coming. And I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak right? Is our democracy under threat? The Prime Minister gave a speech from Downing Street last night. He warned that Islamist extremists and far-right groups are spreading poison.
But I fear that our great achievement in building the world's most successful multi-ethnic, multi-faith democracy is being deliberately undermined. And I want to speak directly to those who choose to continue to protest. Don't let the extremists hijack your marches. You have a chance in the coming weeks to show that you can protest decently, peacefully, and with empathy for your fellow citizens. Let us prove these extremists wrong and show them that even when we disagree, we will never be disunited from our common values of decency and respect.
Well, Rishi Sunak's comments followed George Galloway's controversial win in Rochdale in the by-election this week, which the Prime Minister described as beyond alarming. Galloway says the Prime Minister is playing a very dangerous game. I think it's called democracy, that could drive young Muslims into extremism. But the response from other parties has been more mixed. The Liberal Democrats have accused the Prime Minister of sowing seeds of division, but Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said Rishi Sunak is right to call for the country to unite and to condemn what he called unacceptable and intimidating behaviour. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak right? Is our democracy under threat? Well, joining me now, former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker, UKIP leader Henry Bolton, and also policy analyst Rakib Hassan. You're a former leader, by the way, Henry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not the leader now.
No,
right.
actually.
I'm going to start with you, Norman Baker. What are your thoughts?
Well, he's got a point that democracy is under threat, but it's under threat partly from his actions and the actions of his own party. Let's remember that nobody elected Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. Nobody elected Liz Truss as Prime Minister. That's not very democratic. He's been busy changing the rules for voting at polling stations to disadvantage those who are predominantly younger and more likely to vote Conservative. His was a party he supported that prorogued Parliament illegally in order to try and stop MPs having a vote on what the government was doing. And he's weakened the Freedom of Information Act. So, yes, it's under threat, but it's under threat from him and his party. And it really doesn't count when he comes out with this bilge last night. Another launch, another relaunch. How many relaunches have he had? He was a change candidate a couple of weeks ago. That's gone by the board. This is something new. What we need to have, he's right in the sense, he's right that we need to deal with extremism. Of course we do. but the extremism partly is in his own party. You won't deal with that. You won't call it out.
Interesting. Thank you very much for that. Former UKIP leader Henry Bolton.
Well, I watched the speech or the address with interest, obviously, and I thought he started off quite well. He described the situation as I think most of us have been trying to describe it for months, if not years. So finally, the Prime Minister sent the signal that he grasps what's going on. The problem then, though, was that in terms of action points, all we got from him was, I've had a word with the police, I've told universities that they should ideally stop extremist activities on their campuses, we're doubling the effort on Prevent, and we should all stick together. You know, that was a big letdown. The country sees a problem. The Prime Minister sees a problem. Parliament sees a problem. It's time we actually dealt with it. And this is a Prime Minister who made this address just a day after we had eye-watering figures saying that we've issued 1.4 million work visas, or including dependents and family members. Look, we have imported foreign conflicts into this country. We have turned a blind eye to political Islam. And another thing that worried me about the Prime Minister's speech, and why I don't think that, you know, his words were good, but it's not going anywhere, is that he was appeasing people straight away in that by talking about the far-right extremism. It's not the far-right who are taking control of the streets. It's not the far-right that is disrupting our cities. Let's get this in proportion.
Well, he has to balance it because he's talking about extremes on both ends.
And he's right.
And he is right in that sense. Dr. Rakib Hassan.
Well, to be honest, Nana, I thought the speech was laughable. It was framed as some kind of emergency intervention after a by-election in Rochdale. And I think, truthfully, the real threat to British democracy is when you have a super wealthy Prime Minister talking in front of Number 10 and labelling the result of a legal democratic exercise in his own country as horrifying. I think what would have really strengthened our democracy if the Prime Minister came out last night and said, listen, we're going to pay attention to these results. There's clearly rising anti-establishment sentiments in left-out communities across the country. We're going to engage with those legitimate sources of political disaffection and institutional distrust. And I think in terms of the Prime Minister, I'll make the point that he's ultimately at number 10 as the result of a parliamentary party vote. So I think that he doesn't have much of a leg to stand on if he's serious about heightening the quality of our own democracy.
Yeah, but he would argue that what he's pointing out is the situation, and I think his main focus was a lot of the pro-Palestinian protests and the way the behaviour on those marches was threatening or taking advantage or kind of weaponising our democracy against us. So freedom of speech, there didn't seem to be any barriers to that. So he pointed out the protection on Big Ben, Rakib.
No, absolutely. And Nana, even we've talked before about the anti-Semitic chanting, the displaying of pro-terror paraphernalia at pro-Palestine demonstrations. But equally, that the calls to ban these protests, I think that would be anti-democratic as well. It'd be a fundamental assault on freedom of assembly. So there has to be some kind of balancing act. The reality is, Nana, we have laws in place where we could, the police could take action, robust law and order approach towards that kind of behaviour. So I think that we have those laws in place, and I think we should find out why the law and order approach towards certain very problematic behaviours of that protest, why that hasn't taken place.
Yeah. Norman, was he right, though, to point out all of that with regard to the protests? Or do you think, again, it's a bit too little too late, and actually, why didn't he do that earlier?
Well, I agree with the last comment that there are laws in place to deal with unacceptable behaviour, and it's up to the police to enforce the law. But it's not the answer to start banning people from peaceful and legitimate demonstrations about matters in which they feel very strong. Part of our, this country is based on the right to freedom of speech. It's something this channel has championed, and we have to be able to champion that, and people should be free to speak and march as they want within the law. So cutting down their options is not the answer. So he wasn't right in the sense that he wants to clamp down on demonstrations. That's not right at all. He needs to take a different view. On the point about the far right, I think if you speak to the head of MI5, the MI5 will tell you there is a serious threat from far-right extremism in this country, which needs to be dealt with. So it's not. Let's not underplay that. And the other point I want to make, Nana, very briefly, if I can, is this. The point about Rochdale is important. George Galloway got more votes than the Conservative, Labour and Liberal Democrat candidates put together. And Rochdale is not as Muslim-dominated in terms of the population as, for example, Bethnal Green and Bow, where he previously won a by-election. Lots of people who are not Muslim voted for George Galloway because lots of people are horrified by what the Israeli Defence Force is doing in Palestine. And that's not being reflected by any of the political parties.
All right, Henry Bolton, you've got about 20 seconds. Final word.
I mean, the issue is not the Rochdale by-election. The issue here, and the one that triggered the Prime Minister, I think, is the risk, the threat to our parliamentary democracy. And that is primarily not coming from the right wing, although there is a serious threat from the right wing. I understand that. I accept that. But this particular issue is coming from Islamist political Islam. And that needs to be addressed. And I was disappointed not to see concrete action coming out of the Prime Minister.
No one's mentioned Keir Starmer, which I find interesting. None of you mentioned Keir Starmer and what happened in Parliament. I was wondering whether you would. So finally, then I'll ask you all. Yes,
he is, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, or how he's managing to slither under the radar. OK, so Norman Baker, is our democracy under threat? Yes or no?
Yes, from the Prime Minister and from the uselessness of the Labour Party.
Also to you, Henry Bolton, yes or no?
Yes, it is.
And Rakib, yes or no?
Yes, from a variety of threats.
All right, thank you so much to all of you. Brilliant stuff. That's Henry Bolton, former UKIP leader, Rakib Hassan, social policy analyst, and Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat minister. Thank you for your thoughts. Right, well, this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak right? Is our democracy under threat? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, trade unionist Andy MacDonald and broadcaster and commentator Lizzie Cundy. Still to come, my difficult conversation. Jason Gale will be revealing the journey of an idea to a business and the hardships that appear on the road to success. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Dozens of pro-Palestine marches are taking place in towns and cities across the UK this weekend after Rishi Sunak called on organisers not to let extremists hijack protests. In a speech delivered from Downing Street last night, he called for the nation to unite, warning that Islamist extremists and far-right groups are spreading poison and trying to tear us apart. It followed George Galloway's controversial win in the Rochdale by-election this week, which the Prime Minister described as beyond alarming. The US military has carried out its first airdrop of aid into Gaza. It comes after the deaths of Palestinians queuing for food brought renewed attention to the growing humanitarian catastrophe. President Biden says he hopes to see a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas before the start of Ramadan on the 10th of March. Police are investigating after 3 people were injured in a shooting in an area of London popular with bars and restaurants. 2 women were inside a pub when they were hit by shotgun pellets after a suspect dropped a firearm during a police pursuit in Clapham. A 3rd person was injured by the moped itself. They've all now been released from hospital. A section of the famous Sycamore Gap tree is returning to public view. The much-loved 200-year-old tree was a popular attraction for visitors to Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland, but it was found cut down in mysterious circumstances in September last year, sparking a national outcry. The largest section of the tree will now form part of a display at the Sill Discovery Centre near Newcastle, which is expected to be in place from September. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally
And what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, it's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail and some of us just abroad. You know, just two were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is, the people live in fear to identify themselves as protesters, to identify themselves as against Putin's regime, etc. That's why today there is no chance for opposition to rise inside Russia. But outside, of course, this war against Ukraine, that is the fundamental issue for all foreign leaders. And in fact, just support of Ukraine and not to let Putin to destroy Ukraine, to defeat Ukraine. That is an important issue because just Ukraine, that's not just in Ukraine, war in Ukraine. Ukraine just fighting for their territorial integrity, but fighting for the whole European countries because after Ukraine, other countries could appear, other subject of aggression could be, and Putin easily could try to test Article 5 of NATO Charter. It could be one of the small countries of Baltic states.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, Prince Harry has lost his case against the Home Office for royal protection when he's in the UK. I'll be giving my verdict on whether the prodigal prince should have the same security as a serving royal. Plus, is antidepressant medication a scam? I'll be asking a top expert who says popping the pills isn't always the answer. Plus, my pundits, Mark Meets and tomorrow's papers. We're live at 9.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just coming up to 38 minutes after 4 o'clock and it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm Nana Akua. I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak right? Is our democracy under threat? The Prime Minister gave a speech from Downing Street last night, warning that extremists are trying to tear us apart.
They want us to doubt ourselves, to doubt each other, to doubt our country's history and achievements. They want us to accept a moral equivalence between Britain and some of the most despicable regimes in the world. Let us prove these extremists wrong and show them that even when we disagree, we will never be disunited from our common values of decency and respect.
So Rishi Sunak's comments followed George Galloway's controversial win in Rochdale in the by-election this week. Galloway responded by warning the Prime Minister is playing a very dangerous game that could drive young Muslims into extremism. But the response from other parties has been mixed. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rishi Sunak right? Is our democracy under threat? Well, joining me to discuss, I've got Lizzie Cundy and also Andy MacDonald. I'll go to Lizzie Cundy first.
Oh!
I let him off.
You let him off?
What a win.
Sucking on a boiled sweet.
You gave it to him.
I did.
Boiled sweet from?
It was a trick. One of my many tricks.
Good, very good.
Listen, yes, Rishi was right, and I was pleased he spoke. It's the first time I've seen him so passionate, strong and statesmanlike, but I just feel it's all too late, Nana. Why didn't he do this earlier? We needed him to do this earlier. Look, people are sick of being intimidated. They're sick of the threats. I am definitely sick of feeling scared in my own city. You know, we can't have these hate marches where they're chanting to the river, to the sea, for those words to be projected onto Big Ben. Where was he before then. He knew this, what is happening on our streets. The locals are scared. My Jewish friends leave every weekend. I have a family who are Jewish that are now leaving the country. They feel they're more safe in Israel than in London.
Well, it's interesting what our panellists said, because they said that actually he's the reason why democracy is under threat. First of all, he's unelected. Liz Truss, well, she was voted in and then they just got rid of her, didn't they, pretty much? What do you think?
In fairness, Liz Truss did resign.
Well, she had to resign.
Yeah, because she did throw out her chancellor.
No, she had to resign.
She did, because she did tank the pound and the mortgage rates.
No,
and,
we could
it was.
argue about that. No,
anyway,
You
Rishi Sunak.
can't just drop that in.
You can. Liz Truss did resign. She did resign.
Let me finish now.
She did.
Yeah, she may have resigned, but she had to resign. And as for tanking the pound, people would argue that it would have gone that way anyway. Carry on, Andy.
People would be wrong to argue that.
Well, you don't
but
know
anyway,
that. You don't know that.
Well, no, But what we do know is that she was the Prime Minister when the pound tanked, and then a lot of mortgage offers were revoked.
Well, that's because the interest rates went up.
Because of whose mini budget?
Which they had to go up, would have gone up, so she was a handy scapegoat. Anyway, let's get on with this.
Anyway. What was the question? The question was Rishi Sunak and democracy. Like you said, he is an unelected Prime Minister.
And I let you finish that sweet. I could have got you that.
He is an unelected Prime Minister, like you said. He's been selected by a group of Conservative MPs, not even by the membership of his own party, let alone the electorate. And we talk about democracy has been eroded. That's what he's saying. He's identifying all these problems. Well, who has been in government for the last 14 years and stewarded this erosion of democracy?
Well, what about the
Conservative Party?
Well, what about the Labour Party then, with the issue that happened the other week on that Wednesday, where Lindsay Hoyle was clearly pressurised in some way to sort of reconfigure the way things worked and sort of avoided the SNP's question? What about that? That's democracy.
To an extent. Well, it's parliamentary procedure. It's not direct democracy.
Well,
it's a set of traditions. It's not democracy.
Well, it is part of our democracy, and it was swayed because of fear of apparently its extremism, which is the excuse that he used.
Well, the rules of an opposition day being slightly changed is quite irrelevant. It's an opposition day. It wasn't even a legislative motion. It was a solidarity motion.
He should be brought to task. He's a slippery star.
Why? I assume that an MP will report him to the Standards Committee and there will be an inquiry. I assume.
This way, almost 90 MPs have signed a vote of no confidence in Sir Lindsay Hoyle.
90 out of how many MPs are there?
Well, there are about 650, 651 if you include him. And you only need, last time, it was only 20 MPs that triggered the last
And what happened in Rochdale is a disgrace, what Labour did.
It was a poor selection process.
The UK model of our democracy is totally broken, and Rochdale just proved that. And I know it had a low turnout, but for them to vote for someone that pretends to be a cat rather than three established parties is a very sad state of affairs, and I'm very worried for this country.
Waterson, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice onto the show. Their opportunity to be on and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go to? Should we go to Bristol? I wonder if there's a map. No, there's no map. What happened to the map?
I don't know. I love that map.
All right, let's go to Lee Harris. He's there in Bristol. Lee Harris. No map, Lee. No map, Lee. All right, go on then. Lee, what do you think? Is our democracy under threat?
Yes, I listened to Rishi Sunak's speech, and I admit, there were points where I was nodding along, but let's be honest, he should have made this speech ages ago, and most of it was useless waffle. What struck me was essentially that he echoed the sentiments of Suella Braverman and Lee Anderson, who he stupidly sacked. I think he should apologise and reinstate them both, to be honest. But even though it was late, he is essentially right. I believe our democracy is under threat. I don't think it's terminal, but the threat is clearly there. I mean, you only have to look at what happened in the House of Commons. As we know, Lindsay Hoyle broke long-standing convention and literally changed the way we govern parliamentary debates because MPs are being threatened and intimidated by far-left extremists, by the far left and Islamist extremists. Then all we have to do is look at the Rochdale by-election, where it was reported that candidates were subject to death threats, racist abuse, threats of violence, intimidation, and a candidate was refused entry into the hustings. And every single weekend, as we know, that London is taken over by hate marches. And, in my view, this is all thanks to Sadiq Khan and Mark Rowley, who've taken a soft-touch, hands-off approach. And it's their unforgivable two-tier policing that has empowered the mob. These extremists think they are untouchable, Nana, and effectively they are. All of this is a direct threat to our democracy, and it's getting worse due to weak leadership and dangerously useless two-tier policing.
Well, listen, I would agree with you. There's weak leadership, but that weak leader, even he, wasn't really in our democracy elected by the people. Listen, Lee Harris,
Correct,
thank you very much. Always a pleasure. He's our great British voice. Thank you so much. It's good to talk to you again. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up in the next hour, my great British debate, I'm asking, are you fed up with the two main parties? But next, it's time for my weekly roundup. Lady Victoria Hervey will be here to give us the latest from behind the palace walls.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
People in this field and they talk about mental health assistance. And I know from personal experience within my own family circle that the help is just not there.
I know that with speaking to many families who've got autistic children and adults. They are really struggling at the moment, whether it's to do with education, getting a diagnosis. You know, once they get to 18 to 25, where's the help? There isn't the help there with social care. You know, I just set up a petition as well, who's going to look after my sons when I'm no longer around? Because that's what that's the story and the question that's at the back of every parent's mind. It's just so hard at the moment, and lots of small charities are closing. And for me, they're the backbone of the society, because they're the ones that speak, you know, to parents continually all the time, or autistic adults. So,
and why has it to be that way? And, you know, we'll get government minister after government minister coming on and saying, we have greatly added to the resource here. We've had another 2.5 people we've hired last year, and whatever. They twist statistics and they make it all sound good. But I know from the work I do in the charitable world, and I know from people who I know personally, it just isn't there. So stop telling it is. And the thing is, the demand for mental health care has just ballooned.
The earlier you start working with children who are autistic, the better the outcomes. I've seen it myself, and I know it with my own sons. I shouldn't have had to set up a school and remortgage my home, you know, for my boys. And so many parents are still struggling, like 20-odd years from when my boys were diagnosed, and they're saying it's improving, and we're talking about awareness, we're talking about acceptance. It's hard because I'm juggling caring, I'm juggling, you know, taking him to college, picking him up. You know, I'm running a charity, I'm doing events. I know I'm a workaholic, but I'm very passionate and I'm very driven.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
So 49 minutes after 4 o'clock, it's fast approaching. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. And every Saturday, I love to give you a rundown, and who better to do so than socialite Lady Victoria Hervey. So, Lady Victoria, right, so let's start with Prince William. He missed a memorial for his godfather, the late King Constantine.
Right, and for him to have done that so last minute, it was obviously something pretty serious. And then, of course, we found out about the death of Lady Gabriella's husband, Thomas Kingston, and I think that is possibly the connection. I don't believe it is related to Kate. I know that there was a statement put out by the palace on her, but I don't believe it was at all related to her. I think it was Thomas Kingston for sure.
Are they close? Were they close? Because, you know, is that his cousin?
I think they're close. I mean, if you think about it, William's, you know, related to Gabriella, and they're the same age with the husband. You know, I'm sure that they were good friends. You know, so that was quite a shock, and I think the way that he possibly died was also quite a shock. So,
I mean, the way they've worded it here is that he had a catastrophic head injury, and then they said that they found a gun close to his body.
So
it's very tragic.
It
Very
sounds. I think, you know, there's a lot of that going on, and I think for men especially, suicide is very high at the moment.
Well, I mean, it doesn't say that that's what it is, but I presume some people will you know, take from this information. They said no one else was involved. That may well be that, but it hasn't been clarified in that exact wording. But let's move on to Kate now. Oh, I don't know, actually, should we go for Prince Harry? I suddenly thought about Prince Harry. Let's do Kate. Kate, so what about Kate? What do you know?
Well, you know, so what I've sort of made out from everything that has happened to her and the resting period and her sort of losing weight before, I think it's quite clear that it's possibly Crohn's disease.
Oh, you don't know that, though? There's no report
I don't
of
know that. No. This is not. This is just like my theory. I'm just making it super clear. This is a theory, but which is not something deadly. You know, it's something that you recover from. I've had friends that have had it, and it's just kind of a similar thing because you have to take a couple of months off because you literally have to have part of your bowel, lower intestine, taken out. So you literally are on bed rest for a couple of months. So that could explain the fact that she has to just completely rest, but she will make a complete, full recovery. It's not something life-threatening at all.
But that's if you're right. But this is pure
that is if
speculation.
I am right.
She's a very slim anyway, isn't she? So
no. But it just if you have Crohn's, you lose weight, right? It's not like you're trying to lose weight. So, but it's almost like if that is what it is, it's almost better that they do put out that statement because there's so much ridiculous speculation. You know, the internet's sort of going wild with ridiculous theories.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, they went crazy as well because after that, William then had a whiskey in Wales, and that became, how can you have a whiskey in Wales? Because he's just, you know, he's cancelled an engagement, and now he's gone off to have a whiskey.
And the thing is, you know, the royal family has been quite honest as far as, like, King Charles's health. So I think if it was something sort of deadly, you know, they would have said, but actually, she will make a full recovery. It's not something that is going to, you know, kill you. You can very happily, like, live with it, so...
Well, I mean, let's hope it's nothing too serious and that she can recover from it quite easily. That is obviously speculation. We don't know.
But...
what do you know about the Duke of Sussex? Because apparently he's won his right to some secret files in the hacking claim. So Duke of Sussex and Sir Elton John are to be given secret documents from the Leveson inquiry to support their phone hacking claim against the Daily Mail after a decision by the government. Gosh.
Wow. Well, I haven't sort of followed the very latest on it. I feel like there's so much going on as far as the phone hacking and his various different lawsuits that he has.
Well, he's lost the one with the Home Office, hasn't he?
And his protection, which, you know, he doesn't really even come back here that often, does he, to need it?
Well, the thing is, if you were in the royal family and then you decide that you don't want to be in the royal family, you can't have exactly the same.
He wants the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And that is not really possible to do that, especially right now. Like, the family needs more members of the family to be actually working royals because they need some help.
Do you think there's ever a chance that that Harry in particular would be accepted in this country as a...
Yeah.
You think?
I think so. I think people are very forgiving, and but it'll be a lot of work for him to do, and I hope he does start spending a little bit more time with his father. You know, because at the crucial time of his grandmother, when her health was not very good, he was not making much of an effort, was he? So hopefully it'll be more than a 30-minute, 45 minutes with his father.
And I think we read that also Sarah Ferguson, her cancer hasn't spread, which is a really good thing. It hasn't spread outside to anything else. So that's good. That's what I read today.
You know, as I said, she's a super strong person and she bounces back really fast, so...
Yeah. Lady Victoria Hervey, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
No problem.
That is Lady Victoria Hervey giving us an update on the royal family and her suspicions as to what may well be wrong with Catherine. So what do you think? GBViews at gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. You can also get in touch via our website. And don't forget to stay tuned because on the way, I have a very special guest. His name is Jason Gale, and he set up something called the Lifestyle Awards. We will hear his story next. Stay tuned. This is GB News.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We still have areas of rain, sleet and snow pushing northward through today. Frost and fog and some icy stretches for tonight and staying quite cold, and we can see that nicely on the air mass chart. This pool of cold air sat over the UK. Something milder trying to come in by the beginning of next week, but a cold weekend to come. For the rest of the afternoon into the evening time, we've got these areas, outbreaks of rain, sleet and snow pushing northwards across northern England and Scotland, perhaps affecting parts of Northern Ireland too, are covering over the high ground. Overnight, clearing skies, particularly across central and southern parts of England and Wales. We could see some dense fog patches, some frost and icy stretches as temperatures fall below freezing here. So a bright start in some places, drier than it was on Saturday morning, but some dense fog patches, particularly across central southern England. This slowly lifting and breaking through the day. And then overall, Sunday will be a bright day, some sunny spells. Scattered showers across western areas, again a bit wintry over the higher ground. This weather front could give some thicker cloud across the far east of the country. Temperatures quite cool still, 7 to 9 Celsius, but in any sunshine, not feeling too bad. And then for Monday, a cold and frosty start, some fog patches, and then that mild air starts to come in, but in association with this area of rain across southern and southwestern areas. Over the next few days, it brightens up a little. There'll be some sunny spells and temperatures start to rise as well, back into double figures, particularly in the south.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem, up until now, that in some areas, foreign care workers come in, but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, earlier, if anything we've been discussing on the programme has raised any issues for you, you can call the Samaritans at any point on 116123. But stay tuned. I'm Nana Akua. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, this week's difficult conversation where Jason Gale will be revealing the journey of an idea to a business and the hardships that appear on the road to success. And then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you fed up with the two main parties? But first, let's get your latest news.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Dozens of pro-Palestine marches are taking place in towns and cities across the UK this weekend after Rishi Sunak called on organisers not to let extremists hijack protests. In his speech delivered from Downing Street last night, he called for the nation to unite, warning that Islamist extremists and far-right groups are spreading poison and trying to tear us apart. It followed George Galloway's controversial win in the Rochdale by-election this week, which the Prime Minister described as beyond alarming.
The Rochdale by-election returned a candidate who dismisses the horror of what happened on October the 7th, who glorifies Hezbollah and is endorsed by Nick Griffin, the racist former leader of the BNP. I need to speak to you all this evening because this situation has gone on long enough and demands a response not just from government, but from all of us.
The US military has carried out its first airdrop of aid into Gaza. It comes after the deaths of Palestinians queuing for food brought renewed attention to the growing humanitarian catastrophe. President Biden says he hopes to see a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas before the start of Ramadan on the 10th of March. Police are investigating after 3 people were injured in a shooting in an area of London popular with bars and restaurants. 2 women were inside a pub when they were hit by shotgun pellets after a suspect dropped a firearm during a police pursuit in Clapham. A 3rd person was injured by the moped. They've all now been released from hospital. Now, towns within commuting distance of major cities have seen some of the biggest rent rises in recent years. Newly published research by property website Zoopla shows that rents have risen by more than a third in some towns. Bolton, Newport and Bradford have seen sharp increases, and they're all within short commuting distances from major cities. The company says that while city rents are rising fastest, affordability pressures are pushing more people further out. A fashion show hosted by Victoria Beckham at Paris Fashion Week was disrupted yesterday by the animal rights group PETA. Activists were seen taking to the stage during the show and walking alongside the runway models, holding signs that said "Viva Vegan Leather." The group explained that while Ms Beckham's fashion brand has stopped using fur and exotic skins, they claim it still uses leather obtained via methods it says are cruel. The group has also targeted brands including Burberry and Fendi. The show continued after the protest. A section of the famous Sycamore Gap tree is to return to public view as part of a display at a discovery centre. The much-loved 200-year-old tree was a popular attraction for visitors to Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland, but it was found cut down in mysterious circumstances last year, sparking a national outcry. Northumberland National Park says it received more than 2,000 heartfelt messages from all over the world. The largest section of the tree will now form part of a display at the Sill Discovery Centre near Newcastle, which is expected to be in place from September. Now, fashion icon Iris Apfel has died at her home in Florida at the age of 102. Known for her distinctive glasses and fun, no-nonsense approach to fashion, she founded the luxury company Old World Weavers with her husband in 1950, and she went on to lead a long career in fashion. At the age of 97, she signed a major modelling contract with global agency IMG, just a year after a limited edition Barbie doll was created in her image. And the best of Britain's music industry are gathering in London for this year's Brit Awards, including the Princess of Pop.
Everybody's doing a brand new dance now. Come on,
Singing superstar Kylie Minogue will be crowned this year's global icon. She'll perform a medley of some of her greatest hits. Leading the main awards, however, is Ray, who's already broken records with 7 nominations, the most in a single year. Well, she's up against some stiff competition with Dua Lipa and Olivia Dean, also up for key awards. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is a GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Now stay tuned for the next hour. Me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also Andy MacDonald. He's a trade unionist and a political commentator. Still to come, my difficult conversation today is founder and CEO of the Lifestyle Awards, Jason Gale. Now, Jason will be revealing the journey of an idea to a business and the hardships that appear on the road to success. His Lifestyle Awards have garnered over 2.5 million votes since they launched. And I'll get an insight into his career and challenges that he's faced along the way. You won't want to miss that one. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you fed up with the two main parties? George Galloway's victory in the Rochdale by-election and the surprise success of independent runner-up David Tully have sparked debate over the dominance of the Conservatives and the Labour Party. So is there a growing sentiment of frustration with the two main parties? And as ever, you can get in touch. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. Right, now it's time for this week's difficult conversation. And joining me today is the founder and CEO of the prestigious Lifestyle Awards, Jason Gale. Now, he founded them in 2009. The awards have garnered over 2.5 million public votes and 250 awards have been presented. The Lifestyle Awards have become a cornerstone of recognition for the businesses shaping London's character. And Jason has expanded across the UK and internationally to locations like Monaco and Dubai, picking up partnerships with esteemed names like Rolls-Royce and Grey Goose. And if you didn't know, he featured on Celebrity Family Fortunes, securing 5 top answers and winning £30,000 as a charity jackpot. I'm pleased to say that the founder of the Lifestyle Awards, Jason Gale, joins me now. Jason, welcome.
Thank you. You just explained my proudest moment, which was Celebrity Family Fortunes.
Oh, really? What was that like?
Tell you what, well, I didn't get an and that's why I was delighted.
That's annoying.
Yeah, I know. Oh. I was really pleased with that, but that was a long time ago.
Oh, really? So were your whole family there with you, or who was in your...
So I was with Sunita's family at that time. So
you went out with Sunita?
Yes, for a little while we did.
That's it, really? Yeah. I'm so nosy. Marry me. Sorry. So how quickly did it take you to... So listen, talk to me, Jason. So what happened? So what were you doing before the Lifestyle Awards? What was going on?
So I had a PR company. I was a publicist, really, and I loved marketing, I loved PR, but most of all, I loved London. I loved this city. And I sort of wanted to do something to celebrate London. I really wanted to do something. And then I had an amazing meeting with Bill Clinton.
Oh, really?
I did. And he was trying to raise money for his foundation. And in this meeting, he said, London is the greatest city in the world, and then immediately tried to retract it because he thought, because he's an American president, and he wanted to retract it. And I thought, no, it is. And this was before the Olympics and before we all knew it was a great city. And I was so impressed with that meeting, excited about London. I went home and wrote the treatment, really, for what the awards became.
Really? Wow, that's quite impressive. That's pretty good. So why were you meeting with Bill Clinton? How come
So
that
he was
happened?
trying to raise money for his foundation.
But why were you there, though?
Because I had some people around me that he was trying to get money out of.
I see.
Quite
Where is Bill Clinton these days? What's he doing?
Yeah, I don't hear much anymore. He didn't call me, so I don't know what's...
Although Monica Lewinsky, she's bobbing up a bit now.
Yes.
So talk to me about how you actually went about setting it up and what were the first things you did?
Yeah, I thought at the beginning, I thought this was just going to be a side project. You know, I had this PR company that was great, and we was working with clubs, bars and theatres and a few celebrities and things like that. So I really thought it'd be a side project. But from the first awards that we ever did in 2010, I just fell in love with the process, fell in love with what it could do for businesses, and my love for London grew even further. So I realised within 3 or 4 years, that's where my passion was. And forget the PR bit, just focus on the awards. So, yeah, the journey began.
A lot of people might not have heard about the Lifestyle Awards. So who is in it? Who would be the contestant?
Yeah, one of the things we wanted to do, I was an awards geek, really. I used to go to lots of awards, and I used to sit there and thinking, this is a pay to play almost. You could tell who's going to win an award. You had to win if you bought a table, you won an award, or you had to enter. You had to pay to enter the awards. And I wanted to get rid of all that. So firstly, we wanted the public to nominate. So the public nominated the best bars, restaurants, hotels, beauty salons, hair salons, theatre. And I wanted no cost for entrance because I just wanted to find the best of the best. And that's how we started and got all these nominations through. And then me and a small team choose the top 10s in each of the categories. And then the public votes. So it's a big public voting opportunity, really, for them to show what their favourite businesses are.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it? Because a lot of the time, these smaller businesses don't really get a chance to be at award ceremonies. And, yeah, that sort of gets everybody interacting. And how did you fare during COVID and all of that? Because a lot of these businesses must have... some of them must have gone to the wall.
Yeah, we lost a few. We lost a few of the great businesses, and which was a huge shame. We managed to get events still going through COVID from when we was allowed. We would, and obviously the work is great and the work is fun, and the businesses were struggling, but we was able to support them. They supported us, so we got through. But thank goodness that is long gone.
Yeah, that's behind us, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, when they're starting a business, if you hear somebody say something negative, I hate that because my mother, she can be so negative sometimes. Mum, sorry if you're watching, she always watches and gives me a critique at the end. But you'd say, oh, I've got this great idea. And then somebody sort of says, oh, no, but you don't want to do that. Did you get much of that or did you get a lot of support?
Oh, every time.
Always. I don't want to do that all the time.
I've had several businesses over the years, and every time I come up with a new crazy idea, people say, oh, it's never going to work. Sometimes they're right, sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it does. And when it does work, it's worth not listening to them. So I always trust my opinion more than anybody else's in a way.
Yeah, well, that's the same. I always trust mine anyway.
Yeah.
So I just wonder what they've written in the autocue. Oh, dear. Right, Jason, so talk to me. So the Lifestyle Awards, how long has it been running? And what would you say? How do you want to see it changing?
So we've been in London for 14 years now. We've been in London and we've done really well and it's been fantastic. And that will be my eternal passion, I think. I don't think I'll ever exit it or not be involved in the London Lifestyle Awards. It is my big passion. But what we're doing, we're moving to other cities as well through joint ventures, through licensing agreements. So we're moving to Dubai and to Monaco, but we're also moving across the UK. So our first awards across the UK is going to be the Leeds Lifestyle Awards, which we're going to do shortly. So I just think, as much as I'm passionate about London, there's people in their cities that are passionate about their cities. You know, I watch football, I support Hull City, and when I talk to other football fans, they talk about their great city and they're as passionate about their city. So we're giving the opportunity for people to celebrate their cities like I do for London.
And what about Sadiq Khan and his London then? Do you think he's wrecking it? Do you think he's spoiling London?
I would never say he's wrecking it. I wouldn't. I wouldn't say he's wrecking it. I think he's made mistakes. I think he's put some energy in some areas that and not in some other areas that I'd have liked to see. I think our hospitality industry and our nightclub industry especially needs some more support than it's currently getting, and I think could come from the Mayor's office a little bit more. but I don't think it's reckoned. I still love, and I think London's an amazing city.
Yeah.
I think we've got some work to do. You know, I'm worried about hearing people in the media last couple of days saying they don't feel safe in London. I think that's a big worry for me, and something that we've got to get abreast of. But you know, London's still a fantastic, great city.
Well, listen, Jason, if people want to find out more about the awards and, you know, what you're doing next, when are they? And do you have a website or somewhere people can go?
Yes, our website's BritishLifestyleAwards.com. The London Awards is going to be in October again this year, that they always are. And then we will constantly post and on Instagram and everything about when the other awards around the country will be. And I'll come back to see you to tell you about them.
Oh, that'd be amazing. An invite would be better. Jason Gale, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Jason Gale. He's the founder of the London Lifestyle Awards. Well, if you just tuned in, where have you been? It's just coming up to 15 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. Coming up, the quick fire quiz, this week's big stories. Get your buzzers ready. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are you fed up with the two main parties?
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about, anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... They're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting her zip.
Yeah,
and
also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting her top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... Yeah. I mean, this is low stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if you
no,
say
they
that,
won't.
will they?
They
Because
won't.
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, I'm the unfashionable workplace.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hello, good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are you fed up with the two main parties? George Galloway's by-election result in Rochdale has sparked debate over the dominance of the two main parties in British politics. Galloway is the leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, and the candidate who finished in second place was the local businessman David Tully, who stood as an independent. The result has highlighted growing dissatisfaction with mainstream politics. Galloway's victory in Rochdale and Reform UK's gains in recent polls underscore what appears to be a shift in political dynamics and a yearning for alternative voices. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you fed up with the two main parties? I'm joined now by James Matthewson, former Labour spokesperson, and James Price, ex-Treasury Special Advisor and Director of Government Relations at the ASI. That's a lot, isn't it? All right, so I'm going to start with you, James Price. Are we fed up of these two? The two main ones. It's boring.
I think it's fair enough to say that people are fed up with it, but I think that that's just a normal function of a democracy. The fact that you're allowed to complain about parties and you can get fed up and turf them out of office after a certain period of time. But I think that they're really important for a few reasons. One, in terms of our kind of parliamentary democracy, you need to be able to command a majority in the House in order to form a government and to be able to have some kind of coherent majority to pass legislation. For that to happen, the parties are still the best way of doing that because they all tend to agree on broad ideological ideas and that you can test out ideas, right? We need conservative ideas for now. We might need more liberal, classical liberal ideas for the future. And if we don't have that and you just have a squabble, then you never actually get anything done and the government would never be able to respond to any kind of crisis.
Well, it just sounds like that's what we've just had, actually. You're saying that. As you're saying it, I'm saying that's exactly what I'm seeing. James Matthewson, your thoughts? Oh, is he frozen?
I think I lost you there for a second, and I can hear you again now.
Oh, you're back now. You were frozen for a moment. Go for it, James. So what are your thoughts, James?
Yeah, I think so. I think as James rightly puts it, the other James puts it quite well, is that, it's important to get fed up. Like, it is part of democracy, it's part of that democratic process. But I think it does show you that when people get fed up, the risk is that they drift towards those extremes. And the extreme side of things, which isn't set up for our mainstream political system isn't set up to handle that. And of course, if you had systems, more like PR and all the rest of which I've, always been a bit torn on because of those extremes and because you allow people into the system then who, are more representative of the population democratically, but do harbour more extreme views. That's basically what we're seeing a bit of with this, because the Labour Party essentially vacated that seat, unwillingly, much to the frustration of people I've spoken to in the party this week. But at the end of the day, they vacated the seat, and that absence of their presence allowed for George Galloway to get in. There is no doubt in my mind, George Galloway is an extremist, and I think there was a poll done earlier this week by Politics Relaxed, and Politics Relaxed did a great poll that said that young people, they asked what they thought of George Galloway, and they said 66% of young people had negative thoughts about George Galloway. So I don't think he's representative of some new change in politics.
Did they see the bit where he was a cat? Do you think that's what put them off?
But this is the thing, right? Those young people were probably too young to even remember that now because it was so long ago.
Well, don't worry.
If they'd seen that, it might have been even higher. You never know.
Well, we're going to play a little bit of that as a reminder to anyone who's forgotten. Stay tuned. That'll be coming up later on in the show. James Price, you said... I'm looking at this and I'm thinking... James Matthewson mentioned proportional representation. That ends up with lots of little parties and hung parliaments and a bit of an untidy mess. Do you think it's time for reform, as in reform, not Reform UK?
Well, I think this is exactly the problem. You see this on the continent all the time, that one party can come top and they can never get anywhere near power because they get ganged up on by lots of other ones, even if there's some kind of democratic, you would say, mandate for it. This is the problem, that you end up with politicians doing exactly what the public really, really hates, which is kind of grubby backroom deals to build coalitions where they trade off the things they don't care as much about. They put stuff into their manifestos knowing they'll trade it away in negotiations to form coalitions and things like that. I think that's completely wrong. That's why I think that first past the post is still the best way to do this. And I think that if you looked at some results, say 2015, maybe you'd have found that the Conservatives and UKIP would go into a coalition. I might have been more relaxed about that. I suspect lots of people that want proportional representation, as it's known, would be less OK with it. And because you have a couple of big parties with other ones people can move in and out of as well, you tend to knock all the kind of really hardcore, extreme, far-left people, some of the far-right people too, out of the mainstream parties, because you're trying to get a kind of broad consensus. And I think that gives us a much more healthy body politic than if you were to have lots of really extreme parties pulling the mainstream ones further to dangerous ideas.
But you know what, though? The people who want PR are always the smaller parties. And then, obviously, once you get into power, you wouldn't want proportional representation. You'd want it the way it is, which is why the parties come into power and then they think, oh, I'm not doing that. And that's never going to happen, is it, with the bigger parties? Let's bring in Reem Ibrahim. She's a political commentator. Reem, what are your thoughts? Are you fed up with these two main parties?
I am. I think what's particularly interesting about the way in which the Conservative Party and the Labour Party have sort of been pulling towards their ideological direction. I think over the years people have been using this word, polarisation, arguing that the two main parties are incredibly polarised. But at the moment, I don't seem to think that that's the case. And I think that voters at the moment don't feel as though that they have a choice. This Conservative government, they've got the highest tax burdens since the Second World War, incredible amounts of inflation as a result of huge amounts of government spending, completely reckless, and the Bank of England's quantitative easing measures. So we effectively have an economy that is being stifled by growth. The government is not doing anything to help that, and they are actually actively increasing measures to go against that. The Labour Party itself, again, they aren't necessarily providing a different option that is radical enough for voters. So, if you are a voter and you voted in Rochdale in the by-election, the two main parties don't seem particularly attractive. And that's why you get these issues like foreign policy issues that seem to take precedence over domestic issues. One thing I think that's particularly interesting about the by-election is the cost of living crisis or inflation was nowhere to be seen. The main issue that was spoken about during the by-election is not actually the legacy of the Conservative government or the legacy of Keir Starmer going forward, what that could look like. Everything that was spoken about seemed to have been local issues and foreign policy issues in which George Galloway was very, very good at capturing that kind of political motive.
Yeah, James Matthewson, do you think that this George Galloway victory is a shift and a start and a change, the beginning of a change? Or do you think it's just a one-off? Because it seems that people are now focusing more on the local issues that matter to them and they're listening to what their politicians are saying rather than voting for an overall party. Or do you think that that's how by-elections are? People vote locally until it comes to the general election?
I think, like in every by-election, there's an opportunity for us to kind of take the temperature a little bit, and I think we're able to do that with Rochdale. But as Reem's just pointed out there, I think it's a very unique set of circumstances, this by-election, and you will hear people saying that, and you will hear Labour people saying that. I'm trying to be objective. It is a unique set of circumstances because of them vacating the seat. George Galloway would like you to believe that this is some kind of, I think he said, the tectonic plates have shifted. George Galloway's never been one for, kind of being humble and being modest, let's be honest. So I think he's blown out of proportion completely what this victory means. I think he'll be there until October, November, whenever the general election is, and then he'll be booted back out by the Labour Party. He'll win the seat again. So that's probably most likely to be the outcome. And then at the end of the day, to say that it gives you some idea of something changing, I think the one thing that it does say to me is that there is dissatisfaction, and the Labour Party now needs to make its offer crystal clear, and it needs to start putting some policy ideas forward to the general public.
Yeah, but Labour would say that they would have had this sort of candidate. There's a good reason why their candidate was not standing for ridiculous comments that the candidate made. So that would reflect on the Labour Party in any case. James, do you think James, not James M, but James P, do you think that that Labour just were unfortunate on this occasion, or do you think the sands are shifting?
No, I think it was a really, really embarrassing moment for Labour that they picked this guy without doing the due diligence. And the problem with this chap, by the way, let's all remember that he was saying that Israel let Hamas break into its borders to go and kill people, so they had an excuse. It was horrendous stuff, and he was saying it either because he thought it or because he thought Labour voters would believe it as well and it would be good, or probably, I suspect the case was that both of those things were true. I think that what this shows actually is that far from being fed up with the main parties, many, many more people should get back involved in them. I think they both can, with small memberships they've got at the moment, they can be easily captured by small groups. Some might think that the Conservatives have got an older support base and therefore they are against things like house building, that the Adam Smith Institute would say we need to do more of to help the economy out and help younger people own their own homes, something like that. The Labour Party can be, we've seen in recent years, be captured by all kinds of crazy people under the Corbyn years and God knows what else. We've got a lot more high-quality, thoughtful, passionate, patriotic Brits joining these parties and pushing them in good directions and lending their skills to it at local and national levels, then we'd get round some of the worst successes of these parties being captured, and we wouldn't need the Galloways of the world to show there's a weakness in some of the systems.
Well, I think, you make a good point, but I think, Reem, also, you made a good point about the two parties being so similar, that they are so similar now. I think, in the words of Richard Tice, that they are both, in my view, and I agree with them, they've become socialist parties. Do you think that the nature of the way these parties are evolving means that people might actually start going for parties that are no longer within the main two?
Well, I think James makes an excellent point that actually if more people were to join those parties and encourage different types of ideologies to be sort of shown towards the forefront of the party, then potentially they're able to actually develop that kind of difference and actually strong sort of economic policies. I mean, we saw the Conservative Party really shift over the last few years. And I think that particularly with the Conservative Party, there seems to be a kind of identity crisis, which will probably play out after they lose the next general election. And then we'll hopefully get a truly Conservative party, although I'm not sure I'm that optimistic. I think what's interesting about the Rochdale by-election is that it really has taught, I think, the Labour Party a lesson. More than 80% of Muslim voters in this country voted for Labour in 2019. And I think that Keir Starmer has tried to kind of overcompensate as a result of all of those horrendous accusations of anti-Semitism that we saw within the Labour Party during Corbyn's premiership. And so as a result of that, Starmer overcompensated.
You think, yeah? Do you think? I don't know. I think he's just desperate to get any vote in different pockets of... And he's prepared to sit on the fence so that he can get every single person's vote, but you can't please all the people all of the time. Well, listen, thank you so much to James Mathewson. Final then to you. Are you fed up, yes or no, of the two main parties, yes or no?
Oh no, I'm very much ready for a Labour government. I think we'll see that
was
towards
all
the end
yes
this
or
year.
no.
And then we can
stop. No, it's just yes or no.
We can complain about the Labour
James
government.
Price, yes or no.
There was a politician's answer there,
I know, wasn't it? Yes or no?
Not fed up.
Not fed up. And Reem Ibrahim, yes or no?
I am, yes.
I am. I'm with you, Reem Ibrahim. Thank you very much. James Price and, of course, James Mathewson. Really good to talk to you all. Thank you for your thoughts. Right, now, this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's fast approaching 32 minutes after 5 o'clock. Coming up, my Great British Debate this hour. I'll continue with it. I'm asking you fed up at the two main parties. You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Lizzie Cundy and Andy McDonald. But first, let's get your latest news with Tatiana.
Nana, thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Dozens of pro-Palestine marches are taking place in towns and cities right across the UK this weekend after Rishi Sunak called on organisers not to let extremists hijack protests. In his speech delivered from Downing Street just last night, he called for the nation to unite, warning that Islamist extremists and far-right groups are spreading poison and trying to tear us apart. It followed George Galloway's controversial win in the Rochdale by-election this week, which the Prime Minister described as beyond alarming. The US military has carried out its first airdrop of aid into Gaza. It comes after the deaths of Palestinians queuing for food brought renewed attention to the growing humanitarian catastrophe. President Biden says he hopes to see a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas before the start of Ramadan on the 10th of March. Police are investigating after 3 people were injured in a shooting in an area of London popular with bars and restaurants. 2 women were inside a pub when they were hit by shotgun pellets after a suspect dropped a firearm during a police pursuit in Clapham. A 3rd person was injured by the moped. They've all now been released from hospital. A section of the famous Sycamore Gap tree is returning to public view. The much-loved 200-year-old tree was a popular attraction for visitors to Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland, but it was found cut down in mysterious circumstances last year, sparking a national outcry. The largest section of the tree will now form a part of a display at the Sill Discovery Centre near Newcastle in time for the anniversary of its felling in September. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. Coming up on Clickbait, George Galloway storming to victory in the Rochdale by-elections, but we'll have to take a look at his bizarre clip that's resurfaced on the internet. Can you guess what happens next? But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, are you fed up with the two main parties?
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners, and Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do.
Or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, Prince Harry has lost his case against the Home Office for royal protection when he's in the UK. I'll be giving my verdict on whether the prodigal prince should have the same security as a serving royal. Plus, is antidepressant medication a scam? I'll be asking a top expert who says popping the pills isn't always the answer. Plus, my pundits, Mark Meets, and tomorrow's papers. We're live at 9.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's just coming up to 38 minutes after 5 o'clock. We've only got 21 minutes to go. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are you fed up with the two main parties? The recent by-election upset in Rochdale, where George Galloway, I want to be a cat, emerged victorious, has reignited discussions about the dominance of the main political parties. And with the independent candidate David Tully's surprising second-place finish and as Reform UK gains ground in the polls, it appears that Brits want to change. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you fed up of the two main parties. Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also trade unionist and political commentator Andy MacDonald. Right, Andy MacDonald, we'll try with you first. Andy MacDonald, are you fed up with the two of these parties?
I'm not. I'm not at all. I think it's. I think the Labour Party have been putting forward a coherent policy platform, and as shown by the recent by-elections,
which they win.
Most have been won by the Labour Party. Wellingborough, Tamworth, Mid-Bedfordshire. Most of them have been, and going back even to Birmingham-Erdington, a lot of them have been won by the Labour Party.
Do you know, with the behaviour of the Tory Party, if the Labour Party hadn't managed to gain those seats, there had been some serious problems.
Yeah.
It's not anything the Labour Party have done.
Well, I mean, clearly Reform haven't made a big dent either. The Liberal Democrats have made a small dent, but the Labour Party have been the dominant force in these by-elections. So clearly there is an appetite for the Labour Party. So I would say people aren't fed up with the two main parties.
Yeah, what is it?
And look, Labour aren't winning because of their policies, because frankly they haven't got any. They're winning because Conservatives are so horrific, and I'm afraid the public are sick of 14 years of lying to the electorate. Highest tax bracket, isn't it? It's from 70 years. And record immigration. I think people are sick to death of the Tories not doing anything and not acting, and that's what's sadly missing. And a lot of people are in the political wilderness, Andy. And I think Rochdale showed that people want a change. They are after a change, and I'm saying the change should be for reform. I really do.
Do you think that people who have observed what's happened here, that a candidate just from left field has managed to take on and win a seat that would have been a Labour heartland seat had it not been for your candidate being so ridiculous with his comments?
Well,
no, let me finish.
Okay.
No, don't interrupt me. Had your candidate not been so ridiculous, and there's a lot of this about, it seems to be within the Labour Party. The Tory Party aren't any better, by the way. I'm not supporting any of them. But do you think that this is a sea change now and people are realising that smaller parties can actually win seats?
I mean, in fairness, I don't represent the Labour Party. I'm just a member. I don't speak for them.
Bad.
But as are Ali, the Labour candidate who ran as an independent,
disgraceful
effectively,
man.
Absolutely, yeah, I condemn him wholly. I think his comments were disgusting and disgraceful.
But why did Keir Starmer take so long to say anything?
It's
Dragged his
a couple of
feet,
days.
didn't
It's a couple
he?
of days.
Dragged his
But,
feet.
in fairness, you were advocating your support for reform. They put up a candidate who was suspended from the Labour Party for sexting a 17-year-old girl. So Reform UK didn't have an ideal candidate in this by-election either, in fairness. But just on the point about the wider Labour Party.
That's a bad thing, sexting. How old was she? 17?
She was 17. She was a child. He was in his 40s.
Are you an adult at 16 or 17?
16.
16. Listen, I don't know. I would say it's a big age.
If you're in your 40s, though, and you're sexting a 17-year-old...
Listen, I would say it's bad, but it's not illegal. Is it? Like, if you had picked up something that he'd done that was illegal, I'd say it's bad and that he shouldn't be doing that.
And I thought it was terrible, the tactics that Rochdale did, not letting him in. There was all sorts of going-ons there at Rochdale. It was a disgrace, and Labour let Rochdale down completely.
I agree. I think the process of selection was flawed, completely put factional priorities over the priorities of Rochdale, and I think the Labour Party did mess up in Rochdale. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So Keir Starmer, who's got more U-turns than a Top Gear DVD,
Good, excellent.
and sits on the fence. And you know what worries me? Doesn't know what a woman is. He couldn't answer that question.
Well, he's finally... to give him his dues, after 2 years, he then admitted that it's an adult female.
That worries me, though,
So
for someone that's going to, possibly be our Prime Minister that couldn't answer that question.
Well, the problem I think he has is that he tries to appease too many factions. So he tried to change all the anti-Semitism within his party, which he should have done anyway. But this was obviously his party tactics to get the Jewish vote. Then he sort of tried to get the Muslim vote as well, and that's not gone too well for him because some of his party have either abstained or not called for the ceasefire, which is where we then saw this sort of change of procedure in the Houses of Parliament. So the issue here isn't he just as bad? They're just as bad. There's no other... Where else can people go?
But no, I think, the point about anti-Semitism, the Labour Party was in a horrific state in 2019.
Yes.
And Keir Starmer, I don't think he was doing it for the Jewish vote. I think it was for the survival of the Labour
Jeremy
Party.
Corbyn. He backed him. He said 3 times he will make a great Prime Minister.
In fairness,
Jeremy Corbyn.
Lee Anderson also did back Jeremy Corbyn. He was a Labour councillor. He was a Labour councillor and he was a Labour staff member. He campaigned for Labour in the 2017 general election.
But he didn't specifically... Now,
well, if you don't support the party's leader...
No. He campaigned for Labour, but he didn't specifically express direct support for the leader, as did Keir Starmer.
That's a break of collective responsibility. If you're an elected Labour official,
but he specifically,
you are assuming that you do support the leader.
You can say that, but he didn't name Jeremy Corbyn as somebody. He didn't even I think he called him, didn't he call him a friend? And then he said, oh, we're not really friends.
Yeah, then he backtracked, as he always does. He does another U-turn.
Come on.
You know, come on.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't go, oh, well, Keir Starmer supported him, so he's ruled out. When Lee Anderson also did support him.
No, he did.
Lee Anderson, he did. He was an elected Labour official.
You can be an elected Labour official and not support the way your leader behaves.
He didn't stand by his side.
There are plenty of people.
Well, yes, he did, until he was suspended from the Labour.
There are plenty of people who are Conservatives who may not support Rishi Sunak wholeheartedly and will express that. But if they specifically support their leader wholeheartedly and express that, and even call them friends, then later distance themselves, I don't know. That doesn't sound good.
But look,
well, I mean, Rishi Sunak did that with Boris Johnson. He was his right hand, wasn't he? And now he's gone, it was all a mess.
The worry is people are politically homeless at the minute, and that's why we need a change.
Well, listen, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. There's three of you. Alan McNeely, you go first. 30 seconds, Al. We've been babbling. 30 seconds, Al. What do you think? Are you sick of the two main parties?
Good afternoon, Nana.
Good afternoon.
I've lost faith in all of them. It doesn't matter which political party they are. All you've got to do is look at the SNP in Scotland, the Labour Party in Wales, and think what's coming down the line if we get a Labour government in England. They're all an absolute shambles.
They are. Brian Dugan, 30 seconds.
Well, I think it's a bit harsh to describe the Labour Party as a shambles, given their, real lead in the polls, and the fact that you've got a toxic Tory government, which you just cannot disagree with, Alan. But look, what I am fed up with, Nana, is just the toxicity in our politics overall, polarisation of our politics overall. The Tory party are in a real mess. They're the ones that really have to sort themselves out. Labour have sorted themselves out. They've addressed all of the things, what Lizzie says in terms of, the anti-Semitism. He's dealt with that.
Yeah,
he's absolutely dealt with it.
No, but what about the whole issue with what went on in Parliament? I'm going to have to move on, but I could have talked to you for a long time, Brian Dugan. We're going to have to get you on as we're going to have a good old spat with you. Right. Jonathan Jones is there in Cornwall. Where's my tea?
Looks nice.
I've got my tea. Jonathan Jones, he's always got a tea.
Definitely time for more parties, I think, Nana. Look, I'm speaking to all kinds of farmers in Cornwall who are fed up with the main parties, and I've even met some government ministers who aren't going to continue standing in Parliament next election. So I think these up-and-coming parties could give us a run for money. And I've even had a cup of tea with Nigel Farage, and I heard him say he's not right-wing, he's right so far, which I thought was quite good for him.
All right, nice. Well, I didn't have my cup of tea, but there you are. That's Jonathan Jones there in Cornwall, Brian Dugan, Solihull, and also the fabulous Alan McNeely. My great British voices, they are great indeed. Thank you so much. Right, so what do you think? GBViews at GBnews.com. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, my quickfire quiz and this week's big stories. But next up, clickbait. George Galloway storming to victory in Rochdale at the by-elections. There's a bizarre clip. It's resurfaced online. Guess what happens next? Stay tuned.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally, and what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, it's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail and some of us just abroad. Just two were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is the people live in fear to identify themselves as protesters, to identify themselves as against Putin's regime, etc. That's why today there is no no chance for opposition to rise inside Russia. But outside, of course, this war against Ukraine, that is the fundamental issue for all foreign leaders. And in fact, just support of Ukraine and not to let Putin to destroy Ukraine, to defeat Ukraine. That is an important issue, because just Ukraine, that's not just in Ukraine, war in Ukraine. Ukraine just fighting for their territorial integrity, but fighting for the whole European countries, because after Ukraine, other countries could appear, other subject of aggression could be, and Putin easily could try to test Article 5 of NATO Charter. It could be one of the small countries of Baltic states.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's just coming up to 10 minutes to 6 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's now time for Clipbait, a clip that caught my eye following George Galloway's Rochdale by-election victory. A clip has resurfaced from an appearance on a series of Celebrity Big Brother in 2006, whilst the 69-year-old returns to Westminster, will bring nightmares to Keir Starmer, along with other leading political figures. Will his resurgence bring more disgrace or glory? Let's hope there are no more moments like this. Let's take a look at this bizarre clip of George Galloway.
That's running. Delicious. Good girl. Good girl. Now make your lips got cream all over your whiskers.
For those of you listening on radio, that was George Galloway pretending to be a cat, licking from Rula Lenska's hand, and her hands with the bowl. Well,
I've got to tell you something. I know Rula Lenska very well, and she can't bear this because every time she goes into a restaurant, they serve her a bowl of milk. It's never left her. It haunts her forever. Oh, dear.
God.
Oh,
Dear. Poor Rochdale.
Recover from that one.
Poor Rochdale.
I've never seen that before.
Well, I'm glad you have now.
He's traumatised.
Once you see it, you can never unsee that.
I know.
It's time now, though, for our quick fire quiz, the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. Joining me, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Your buzzer, please, Lizzie. And also trade unionist and political commentator Andy McDonald. Your buzzer, please. Please play along at home. Question 1. The Highland Games trophy was discovered after being lost for 90 years. But where was it found? Is it A, in someone's house after a clear-out, B, at a charity shop, or C, in the English Channel? Lizzie Cundy.
I'm going for A.
Yes, and what do you think?
B.
The answer is, well, it was found in someone's house, which is A.
A.
Yes, we need to put that on there. Very good, Lizzie Cundy.
Thank you.
Nil point for you, Andy. Right, OK, yes, so after it was found, after being tracked down 500 miles away in Devon, that's where it was found. Question 2. Closest answer wins. The world's oldest dog has his word record...
World record. World record.
World. It's world, not world. Has his world record stripped following controversy around his real age. But how old was the dog?
25.
Did I say your name?
You didn't say anyone's name.
Andy McDonald.
25.
Lizzie Cundy?
26.
The answer is 30. The dog was 30. 30 years and 268 days old. Lizzie Cundy.
Ooh, thank you.
2-0.
2-0. All right, question 3. True or false? The Rwanda plan is set to cost the UK $1.8 million for each asylum seeker. Andy McDonald.
False.
Lizzie Cundy. True. The answer is... It was true! plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda will cost them.
Well, I don't want to clap at that.
1.8 million for each, the first 300 people. Right, OK, question
And no one's taken off?
Let's hope yes. Question 4, let's hope we've got I'd like to hear the poll as well, how well our Twitter poll has done. Question 4, George Galloway sweeps to victory in Rochdale by the by-election this week, but how many voters did he win by? Lizzie Cundy.
Sorry about that.
Was it 9,500, 14,300 or 12,335?
B.
Andy McDonald, Lizzie Cundy, buzzed before I'd finished.
C.
C, 12,335. Lizzie Cundy?
I'm going to go for C as well, then.
C, you should have gone for something else. I don't know why you did that.
didn't.
The answer is C.
Yes. I knew it was right there.
35 votes. And final question. Rail fares to rise on weekends, adding more pain to commuters' journey. What percentage will it rise by? Quickly, 5 seconds. Lizzie Cundy.
10%.
You, quick.
15%.
15%. The answer is... You couldn't win anyway. 4.9%. Lizzie Cundy. You are today's winner. She wins 4-1. On today's show, I've been asking, is Rishi Sunak right that democracy is under threat? According to our Twitter poll,
wow.
90% of you say yes, only 10% of you say no.
Wow.
Well done. Thank you so much to my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie Cundy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also trade unionist Andy McDonald, thank you very much. And a huge thank you to you at home for your company. It's always a pleasure. Join me tomorrow. Christine Hamilton and Danielle Mason will be joining me. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place at 3. Enjoy the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's going to be quite chilly tonight, some frost and fog and some icy stretches around, but Sunday should be drier and brighter. We currently have low pressure in charge of our weather, but it does start to move away through Sunday, allowing a drier day before then further wet and windy weather spreads in from the west for Monday. For this evening time, we do have outbreaks of showery rain, sleet and some hill snow across northern England, spreading into Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland and some western fringes of Wales too. Elsewhere, we'll see some clear spells, and as temperatures drop overnight, we'll see some mist and fog patches forming, some icy stretches too. Temperatures in the countryside -2 to -5 Celsius. So could be some tricky travelling conditions across central southern parts of England first thing, dense fog patches, but they slowly lift and break. And then for most, it's a bright and cheery day, plenty of sunny spells, a scattering of showers across western parts of the UK, and this weather front close to the east could give some patchy rain along the east coast. Temperatures up a little bit compared to Saturday, a bit more brightness around. It will just feel a little less cold. Then into Monday, this weather system starts to move into western areas, bringing some outbreaks of heavy rain and brisk winds too. Elsewhere, a cold, frosty start, but then plenty of sunshine across the north and the east through the day, and temperatures a little higher once more. It remains mixed Tuesday and towards the middle of the week, but temperatures a little above average. See you soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meanwhile, we've got Prince William getting on with being a real royal, or is he? I mean, this business about being ambassadorial in the Middle East, about the Gaza situation, about the Israeli situation, about trying to be friends with everyone, this is sensitive ground.
It's very demanding, I think. It must be one of the most difficult things he's ever done. He has been to Israel before and the Middle East. He was the first of the royals who went there, and he spoke to the leaders of both in Israel and on the West Bank.
Yeah.
And he managed it beautifully. He managed to carve a very sort of delicate path. I think as well, he doesn't want to cut ribbons. He doesn't want to do the ordinary things, to go round and see people and do it unless he really cares about it. This is people who are homeless. These are people who are in a war. I think he wants to go very, very high up, not for arrogance.
Make a difference in the world.
But to help, and to try and smooth things
Angela,
over.
I might be way off the mark here, but he did not, to me, look a happy man at BAFTAs on Sunday night. There was just
lonely, for sure.
Yeah, there was just something about his face that looked like I didn't want to be here.
He did look lonely, but I also thought he made a huge effort so that everyone would enjoy it. He didn't want to pass it on. He doesn't use his personal feelings publicly, whereas Harry, you can tell a mile off what Harry's thinking. So he's done very well for that. And I think because he's been their president since 2010, he didn't want to let them down. Very nice of him. But he's obviously very